Welcome. Hope you can hear me. Let me make sure actually, because I've never tested this thing. I think it's working though. Hopefully it is. This will make it to where I don't have to talk as loud if yeah, I think this is all right. If it isn't, just tell me and I'll switch over to something different, but hopefully this is working good. All right. Welcome. 3, it's the magic number. I don't know the lyrics to that one. All right. Let's get this. Let me do something really quick. Put it out onto Twitter sphere. Let me do something really quick. Put it out onto Twitter sphere. Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm just going to leave it alone. I don't think I can do the headset. I didn't really get it ready. Well, hello, Fredo. All right. Well, glad everybody's joining here. And I'm going to, let me get this done really fast. How is everybody? Let me do this. I just got to put this link on Twitter real fast. I'm not going to do anything fancy. That way I don't slow us down because I want to get through quite a bit of material here. And I'm working full time during the day. So I still enjoy doing this, guys, but it's just like I've got to be able to get through the material a little bit quicker than I have been with less meandering. If for no other reason, it just seems to help with the flow of the material and people that try to, that want to listen to it without hearing me go off on a lot of tangents or everything like that. Although I know you guys like the tangents. Control defensive behavior series, part 1. All right, do that live now. Okay. So that's on Twitter. And that part's done. All right. All right. Well, looks like we got, wow, look at that, 8 people already. Well, that's, for my channel, that's pretty good numbers. So to have that many right away, sometimes we struggle to get that many after like 30 minutes, especially when I don't give you notice. But I've been doing this regularly now, so I guess people are back to expecting me here again. I was kind of absent for a while, guys. I didn't do material for, very, very frequently, and I'd always intend to get back on more regularly, but yeah. I don't want to say too much, but it's a full-time gig. I don't have to go anywhere to do it. I can work from home, and I'll just leave it at that. Doesn't pay extremely well, but I don't have to do much for it except for just sit there. So it's not that simple, guys. I mean, there's work. It's definitely work, but I'm just telling you, like, it's not. I don't have to commute or anything else like that. So it's a good opportunity for a person that has my, wants to do the kind of work that I do, and still like it's made it possible to where I can keep the channel. The only problem is, guys, I'm just going to say this. I'll try not to do much advertising, guys, but because I have been out of the loop for a while and I have been doing a lot of material lately, um, I'm not going to get paid on that job for a while, and this channel is really slow on revenue. So those of you who would like to contribute, this would be a great time if you ever wanted to, if this work has inspired you or informed you. in any way. I mean, even a little bit helps, guys. That it'll just help me get over the bridge to where once I start getting some paychecks from this thing that are meaningful, when I actually get all my hours in, I've already worked the time. It's just going to be a time to get it. So I won't be doing too many commercials, guys. If I have everything taken care of, I'll just be doing this, and it'll be like I always do. Like, hey, just if you can, great, But yeah, I think you guys know me enough by now where I usually don't even put a commercial out unless it's really necessary for the channel or I have something going on. And the times that I didn't, you just didn't hear me say very much. So this would be a good time as all. But I mean, as far as like my daily situation and like day to day, yeah, I'm comfortable there. There's no problems there. I don't have to worry about anything. But I also have to sort of kind of like get things going a little bit. So, but thank you for joining. And again, guys, you can find all the details through that description section. And if you want to write to me about things or whatever else like that, we have conversations, and that's all the details are there. Okay. And so I don't want to delay this too much. Um, what I'd like to do is just tell you really quick what this is that I'm going to be doing. And I'll just bring my screen over here so I can actually read it. Hang on. This is a report that I posted just to give you an idea how long I've been doing my channel. One of the first things that I did that was of real meaning was this report called Controlled Offensive Behavior. This one was posted in February of 2017. So I'm going to be pulling from the archives of nearly, well, over 5 years it's been since I posted that. And it's a whole series where I basically go through this report called Controlled Offensive Behavior that was released by the Defense Intelligence Agency. And it goes over weaponized frequencies top down. This to me was everything that I was looking for within my research. It wasn't everything, but it was a huge, huge piece of helping me understand this at a broader level. It made me it grounded me a little bit as far as my understanding of things. It was one of the first sparks that I got that I really needed to dig deeper into the connection between electromagnetic frequency and the human body, and what is the human body relative to electromagnetic frequencies and signals. How does body voltage get affected through electromagnetic things? How does our blood groups play into it? What effects these things potentially have on species that are not human? All of it's covered in this report: the human impact, animal, flies, birds, all of it. They also get into psi research. They get into, what I liked about it is the specificity of the report, how much it gets into like just nitty gritty, good old engineering details, like, um, things that are kind of, like telling you, okay, here's the SHF band that's called super high frequency. And we've learned that when we modulate this frequency at this type of power level, it has this effect on people's brains. Or we knew that we could cook a human target from this far. I mean, things are kind of that specific, not quite where they call cooking human targets. I mean, they don't go that deep into it, but it's an acknowledgement via a military report that you can in fact do things to harm people using these types of methodologies. And as a person that spent 20 years in the radio frequency industry and having never really witnessed anybody do things malevolent, it's a hard leap to make when somebody from the outside says, but Gabe, how could you not know? There was all these towers that were doing this and you guys put them on ley lines. Not trying to criticize. Somebody said that the other day in the room, and we had a good talk back and forth in the chat. I said, no, we really aren't wired that way. We're not running around trying to put things on ley lines, the engineers. It wasn't ever inside our heads to do that. I discovered that some of them like are on energy lines later on, where they seem to have generated things in that realm that are more etheric in nature, that are difficult to explain, but it was never through direct intention, not by me. And as far as I know, not by any of the other people I knew that designed them. And so when I first started getting my research done, I really just wanted to sort of understand it better myself. And then once I did, I guess I just wanted my colleagues and people that had similar engineering minds to at least understand why I made the decision that I did, to leave the industry and to stop being in the wireless industry. Because, guys, it's crazy money. I mean, it's really good pay. I'm not going to lie to you. Like right now, for what I'm doing, I make about a third doing the job that I just got. I make literally a third, actually less. I actually make less than one third of the pay that I did when I was in the wireless industry. Okay. Just to put it in context, I have a skill set, I have knowledge, and I have, whatever experience that should pay me closer to 50 plus an hour. And I have in the past made close to that, or got salary and things like that. They're really, really lucrative contracts. And if you can be a career engineer, you're pretty much set. And most companies won't want to lose you. And again, I stayed in the wireless industry for 20 years at this nearly the same company. I was there for almost 18 years, the same company. I mean, who gets to keep a job anywhere for that long? So that's kind of what it is. You're comfy. You don't really feel like examining all these issues involving, like, when people make weird claims on the internet, like, you know, well, we have these orgone things and they beat cell towers. Well, they don't actually, guys. Those little orgonite things you're making that you claim beat cell towers, they don't. But if you were to study concepts of orgone and things like that, you may discover that not everything that people that were in that realm of knowledge thought was completely wrong. It's just that they've been introduced to it in a way that is intentionally wrong and meant to steer you off. And you can take my word on that one or not. It's entirely up to you. But I think my material speaks for itself. It's pretty good. I think it's a very balanced perspective. And I think that it's there to sort of like understand, how complex it is, and that it's not just as simple as black, white, or, whatever you want to say, zeros and ones. There's a lot of different things you can do with frequency, both for good reasons and for bad reasons. One frequency that you use on a tower. Well, okay, here's the best example, guys, before I get into this report. This is something for you to remember. Within a microwave oven, if you really study like what those frequencies are, inside a microwave oven, you oftentimes have a signal that's nearly identical to modern Wi-Fi. 2.4 gig is actually one of the frequencies that's used inside a microwave oven. And the same frequency that was used for early cordless phones, I believe that's like around 815 or 928. One of those two or both have also been used in the megahertz. About 815 and 928, I think, are the megahertz frequencies. The point is, those are both frequencies that are really close to the cellular band of cell towers. Now, should you read that and go, well, then you're microwaving people? No, because it dissipates once it leaves the antenna on the tower. Whereas in a microwave oven, it's literally just designed to stay inside the chamber like a Faraday cage and go until the food inside has been cooked with the frequency. All of us aren't in that box having it circulate like that. However, yeah, you could have the same effect if you replicated the same conditions within the environment. Yeah, the same signals could do that. So it's a nuanced argument. It's not really a apples and oranges, whatever you want to say, kind of thing. So, but thank you to everybody saying hello. I'm not gonna forgive me if I don't see all of them, but yes, thank you for watching and sharing and everything else like that, and all the nice vibes. I appreciate it. Um, all right, so I'm opening up with that one thought before I read this description here, and it goes as follows. Okay, this is part one. And guys, I know way more. I want you to know also, like, I did this is one of the first things I did on the topic. So I'm probably going to interrupt it semi-frequently just to correct things that I might want to say better or articulate better. Because again, my knowledge was pretty basic at that time. I had my radio frequency experience as an engineer, but I hadn't really studied like human energy concepts that deeply yet. And I didn't understand. I hadn't had a chance to test or use like a helionosis life meter to actually verify that orgone is something that exists and has a measurable signature out of the human body, as well as soil and trees and things like that. So once you start measuring this orgone, this human energy bioplasma field, or how whatever this subtle energy is that affects the plasma field, once you actually can detect what's invisible, and you can see that it has noticeable signatures that moves needles this way and that way. To a person who has my training and background, that's everything. Everything that we said in the industry was, I don't really care how you feel about the problem. I want to see the information. I want to see the data. Can you show me this signal? If you're going to tell me I should care about your orgonite device, can you show me the before and after in a way that passes muster? No, no, don't just show me that you put something in front of it and it blocked it, because that's a stupid test. I see these tests all the time, guys, and I just shake my head. So do professional engineers all the time. They look at this data and go like, guys, you don't know what you're talking about. And guess what? They're right. However, this is where I'm a good mediator in this. When you watch something like resonant frequency, no, resonant beings of frequency, it's a documentary that talks about how we're all just light beings effectively in electromagnetic signals and pulses, and we have a pineal gland that's piezoelectric responsive, that kind of thing. you know, that's where it gets really compelling. And when they start providing data about the Schumann resonance, and then I did all this research on human brainwave, and I realized how closely connected all these things were. To me, that was just everything. And I didn't really need a whole lot beyond that, because I'd kind of just determined on my own that, yeah, this is a thing. I should be more cognizant of it. I shouldn't just be dismissive just because there's a bunch of people out there waving their arms around that don't really, either they're consciously manipulative, or they just don't have the education in the background to understand it properly. So what I'd like to do with this material is just put it in as plain of language as it's not a lot of technical jargon. I really try to, guys, I'm not really an engineer in the classic sense. Like, I learned how to be one, but I am a layman. I am a person that's more of a regular guy that just sort of stumbled into being a technician engineer. It wasn't my goal. It wasn't really what I started out as or anything else like that. It just became, it became something that I became. Somebody literally just came up to me and said, "How'd you like to fix cell towers? You want a company truck? People like you, man. We'd like to bring you on board." And I was like, "Well, okay, yeah, all right. Makes good money. Why not? Okay, sure." And so that's how I got into it. I was just a hard worker. I was there at the right place at the right time. The right people asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said yes. Then it turned into a very long career in wireless. So that's how I know what I know. And that's how I'm just telling you guys, as a person that's been in these sort of like immersed inside your information community, I can tell you that, yeah, I prejudged a lot of your information incorrectly. Like, I didn't always give you the benefit, or listen to you as non-engineers, those who would like have information. But I'm also aware that quite a few things that you understand about what the actual impact or whatever is also very, very wrong, or assumptions that you've made about the cellular industry and the people that are in it, or why towers are built, or why they're there, are completely misguided and wrong in many cases. Okay. I'm saying that out of like complete respect. It's because you, as the audience, as a lot of the people out there, I was getting more information from people like you that were like, well, what about this? So I would discard like 80% of it. Probably it's like garbage. And it was mostly just disinformation garbage. It's made to look that, like, make those people look foolish, because they don't know that what they're presenting to an engineer like me or a technician like me, they're not even aware of how inaccurate it is. And this is sort of an MK Ultra game on all of us, getting you to sort of say the wrong thing to the right people. And then we look at you like you're nuts, and we never give you like an actual consideration. So just disregard it, guys. Don't talk about it even. Just leave it alone. It's just they anytime I do material that's like this relevant, they just throw in a lot of the bots and the distractions. So don't let it distract you. I won't let it distract me. Let's just disregard it, please. Don't feed the trolls. Okay. All right. If it's still up on the screen, though, let me know. But if it just appears, then it gets blocked right away. Don't even talk about it. It's up to you, but I don't want to respond to it, because they're just throwing bot after bot. They were doing it when I did the energetics series. Anytime you get into human energetics and you start really discussing like the things that they don't want you to talk about in a way that's actually like meaningful and actually sheds some light on the topic, they throw a lot of the bots in to distract me, the chat, everybody else. So the less we can regard it, the better. All right. On to that. No worries though. I'm not picking on you. Okay. It's just, you know how it is. Don't feed the troll. In part one, I provide analysis of the Cold War concerns about psychic warfare, telepathy, and ESP. The document referenced in this clip can be found below. If you go into this playlist, which I'll give you a link to, I have all the links to CIA.gov. Yes, it's that CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency. You may not be the best idea to go directly there, but if you want to, that's the link so you can see the report yourself and download it, or you can just look up the document number in Google or something like that. And you can probably find that somebody else already has it and uploaded it someplace. I put this section deals with page 24 of the Defense Intelligence Agency report and provides evidence-based correlations to more esoteric data provided by authors Preston Nichols and Peter Moon in the Montauk Project Experiments in Time, specifically relating to Wilhelm Reich's orgone studies and the Phoenix Project. Specific references are cited for researchers. I have included my own signal measurements, including a video clip generated from a live spectrum analysis performed in Oregon. This section is very data heavy and a tad technical, but it is needed in order to provide an evidence-based foundation for the rest of my material. It will get more interesting soon. Next up will be telepathy and UHF. So there you go, guys. Don't worry about it, dude. It's just like, again, it's just, they're bots. It's not even like a person. They're bots. Just leave it alone. Seriously, the less you pay attention to it, the better. Don't even distract me with it because it just adds more to the material, guys. I don't like to get thrown off. But thank you for being concerned, though. I'm not trying to pick on anybody. It's just better not to regard it. So let me put this up on the screen really quick. Welcome back. Okay, this is part one, where we're going to talk about the connections to some of this data and how it correlates to the
It'll be on the screen soon.
Montauk Project. It's a book by Preston Nichols and Peter Moon. And the reason why I want to reference this book is because he makes very specific references to Wilhelm Reich's orgone energy experiments that took place decades ago. And it's very relevant to things that are happening today because it was studying a field that wasn't really defined clearly yet, called psychoenergetics, or just plain energetics, depending on your preference, I guess. This kind of ties into the Navy's experiments on the USS Eldridge, where they were trying to test cloaking technology using radio frequency. And so I think this book is worth just reading. Regardless of your opinion on the material overall, it's a very good reference guide as far as the specific frequencies, just to try to help understand maybe a little bit about how I came to some of the conclusions that I came to, because it's just another reference point for me to say, hey, I read this book. There's some truth here. I'm seeing some of these things myself. And this is me basically explaining the correlations I'm finding to some of the data that Preston Nichols presented in the Montauk Project, specifically how it relates not only to Montauk, but also the USS Eldridge and what's known as the Phoenix Project, which is different than what people associate with now as the Phoenix Project. Oftentimes, I think it's kind of considered sort of like a mercenary project that was in Vietnam.
Really fast, guys. I had not discovered until a friend a couple years ago recommended Music in Time, also by Preston Nichols and Peter Moon. I would almost argue that book is far better as far as understanding some of the material that I've been doing too. It really synchronized incredibly with it. It's a very esoteric book. It has some extremely strange information in it, just like this one does. But if you understand radionics, if you're open to understanding timeline things involving technology that can manipulate timelines, then I think you'll find that, as weird as the books are and as abstract as the stories can be, and how they have sort of mixed histories, like what you're going to find very frequently, guys, is that they basically sometimes have completely different ideas of things that happened in history relative to what there actually would be as far as standard narratives out there. So the author in the book has like memories that exist on like 3 or 4 different timelines. I know that makes the person seem crazy, and you never know. While Preston Nichols was alive, that just may have been the way that he provided cover for himself, was just to like add all the weirdness to it. That way he could slip in the technical information. So whatever reason it was done, there's no question that if you watch Preston Nichols' material, he does videos way back. There's lots of interviews that existed with him. He won't resonate with everybody, I understand, and I'm not saying like I would necessarily have wanted to have like like be buddies with him in the classic sense, but there's no question that he's one of those old school radio guys that just learns everything about ham radio and frequencies and radars and satellites and every type of antenna. He knows its theory, he knows it inside and out, gets it. He's done so much material that when I watched it, it just made me go, wow, nobody ever talks about this. Nobody ever does. And he does. And this whole thing involving energetics and archaeometry, he had the more technical radio level knowledge, and it hardly ever manifests in these books. But if you get the PDF files of them and just do some quick searches on radio terms like UHF or frequency or megahertz like MHZ, like you just look up the key words that are related to frequencies, and you can just find the chapters that have the more useful information. I didn't know anything about radio songs and things like that until I read these books. So sorry to interrupt, but I just want you to know that Music and Time is another really good book to read to understand magnetic resonance relative to frequency and timeline things. And that this book here mostly has things about the radio songs. So I'll keep playing it.
And that's not what this is about specifically. This is related to something completely different involving radio frequency. So getting back to this slide really quick, honestly, this part here really isn't that big of a deal. I just kind of wanted to highlight this part here that it more or less demonstrates that during the Cold War, you had the U.S. government and USSR really keeping an eye on one another and constantly worried about what the other one was going to do research-wise. They were always trying to keep up with one another. So paragraphs 1 and 2 are more or less from the perspective of the USSR and how they saw their own research and perceived the U.S. And as I discussed in my last intro, that there's a lot of people that studied the U.S., the Soviet Union's psychoenergetics program and the research they were doing into telepathy, and were very concerned that the U.S. was far behind. And so I just think this demonstrates that this was a mutual concern. So they were doing a lot of research as far back as not just 1972 when this report was written, but well before that. So I would just encourage you to read through this on your own. So how does this all tie in to today in real time, what we're dealing with now? Well, first, the book specifically, the Montauk Project, deals, I want people to kind of take a quick pause on this. If you have the book available to you, I would encourage you to take a look at these specific passages if you can find them, okay? Look into these pages on the book. And if you'll notice here, you'll see I highlighted, I just did a search by MHZ for megahertz to see what I could find in relation to data that I'd found and located myself. I do research involving spectrum analysis. As I told some of you, I'm a radio frequency engineer by trade, so I'm familiar with how to use a device like this that measures frequencies like these here. So, for example, a lot of times you see people on the internet saying, I measured really strong EMF. Well, that's good because that's energy, right? That says that you're seeing this spike, okay? But that's all it's telling you is that you see the energy of this. It's not telling you that it's this, right? You might get this level right here. I might tell you how many decibels is within a certain range. So you might get, it's like it might peak out once it hits like 30 dBm, for example, or 40 dBm might be a threshold for reaching like a really high level. And then 73 might be more of a medium level, and then 100 might be a completely low level on the EMF meter. But see, that's all it's really telling you is based on some numeric value that's pre-programmed within that EMF meter. It's just telling you that it's strong or it's not strong, strong or it's not strong. And that could be coming from anywhere. That could come from your cell phone, your Wi-Fi, your Bluetooth, your laptop, anything. So my recommendation is if you're going to perform these type of measurements, shut everything down, right down to the breaker level before you do anything like this, if you want to call this type of data. That's my recommendation to all you people who want to replicate this and using one of these devices like an RF Explorer 6G spectrum analyzer to see what you can find on your own. But I would encourage people to try to replicate this because, and I would say you can do it with both these devices. This is really cheap. This device here will only run you like anywhere from 20 to 40, 50 bucks US, depending on your options and what kind of antenna or
or other type of things, like a little remote control if you want to. It's lots of different ways you can go. And then this here, it runs probably closer to between like $350 to $400 when it's fully optioned. And it does perform really nice spectrum analysis for a relatively low cost device. And so, just to give you an example of what this looks like, so these are the signals that were associated with. Just, I know I'm bouncing around here, guys, but bear with me. These are the signals that are associated with the Phoenix project. If you notice here, 403 megahertz. This is my measurement here. You can kind of get a relative look here how it correlates. Kind of see there it's around like a neg 40, neg 30, kind of spiking all around there. That's pretty strong. Now, I'm suspect of this, so I just want to make sure people know that. I really feel like this requires further verification from somebody, just because this is kind of odd signal behavior. I'm not sure if I should trust this, if there's some harmonics going on here. It just looks bizarre to me. So,
yeah, to be clear, guys, now that I look back on it, the one there on the bottom left corner, I would pretty much disregard that spectrum analysis altogether, because that really was just something weird that was going on with the memory stick. I did find the signal, but I just don't trust that measurement. However, the one taken above it in the yellow frame there, the spectrum analysis of 1678 to 1680, 100% legit, taken with a good device. And there's no issues with that slide at all. And I actually will show you another live spectrum analysis that's actually video after this presentation that will show you a better, the whole chart, and it moves up and down and everything like that. So you know that one's legit. Be right back.
Then you have this signal here, which I generated, which if you want to see what it looks like live, he basically talks about how these radiosondes were sending out these sort of pulse signals. And you can see through here, he actually talks about pulse potential scalar, 7 megahertz is coupled, 1680 megahertz oscillator. Okay, see this? And he actually discusses the signal behavior. So I would say that if you're a person who maybe has a background in ham radio, amateur radio, I would really encourage you to look into this. And for those of you who are curious what this might look like in real time, this is a quick clip. I should say this is, it's not quite real time. It's set to max.
All right, guys, don't worry, because I have a better one that I have complete video of that's after this clip. Like, the entire video is quiet. There's no sound to it, and I'll narrate that one. It's better than this video you're seeing here. Oops. Oh, crap. Sorry about that. That's actually the video. I just put it on too soon. Sorry about that. But I'll play it next after this one's done. Ah, man. Hang on. All right, we were right about there. Okay, sorry about that.
Might be more of a medium level, and then neg 100 might be a completely low level.
So this is
see, that's all it's really telling you is based on some numeric value that's pre-programmed within that of a radiosonde. So what you just saw earlier, that signal behavior,
horrible technical skills tonight. Sorry, guys.
Like this, okay. Now, the premise of the radiosonde, if you read the book, is that they were sending these things up in like weather balloons. Okay, so I've measured signals. The one you just saw there was right on the neg 70s and everything. That's inside my home. You know, it's in building and everything like that. I've actually found that same signal in other parts of my home around like neg 55, which is quite a bit stronger. Now, if it's a weather balloon, it should be quite a ways up there, I would think. And these devices, I wouldn't think would generate that much power. But if you notice here, there's your signals, right? See how it says MHZ? So I'm not sure what to make of that. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. Okay. And but this is my research, and I can actually show you many more slides and many more spectrum analysis that I've done. I have a very large database of these things, but I just don't want to bog this down with too much technical data, so we'll move on. So getting into telepathy and UHF. So why is this important? Well, UHF, actually, you know something? I think I'm going to save this for another section here. And yeah, we'll move on to this one. So anyways, we'll pick up on part 2 very shortly, telepathy and UHF. All right, hello. Just wanted to throw this in here as a supplement. I've done these measurements before, but this is done.
Yeah, this is okay. Sorry, guys. I should have just let that last one end. Sorry about that. There wasn't much left in it, and I think it was like all blah blah blah. This is where it's actually relevant. So I kind of gave you a crappy, like, held up the spectrum analyzer to the screen. This, I actually plugged the spectrum analyzer. There's a hardware spectrum analyzer. I plugged it into the computer and used a software program to create this nice clean chart where you can see all the different parameters there. And that way, when you look at this, say for example, you decide to go out and get your own spectrum analyzer, you can just take a screenshot of this and you know how to, set up your settings, find the signal and everything. And those spectrum analyzers are less than $400 for a complete kit. So if you ever wanted to get one and do your own measurements, or you're curious if you could replicate these findings or find other things on your own, that's something for you to consider. It's a nice guide to look into it.
A little bit differently. So I'm using a software called iRF Explorer. It's designed for this device that I'm using, which is the RF Explorer 6G. It has a frequency range, as you see here. Well, at least this is the one setting right now. There's 2 different radios in it that it can receive with, 15 to 2700, and then there's another one that handles that upper 5.8, or rather 5800 megahertz in that range. So these are my settings. Kind of see how I have it configured here. This is to cover the 1680 megahertz band that I discovered that Preston Nichols talks about. These are a little bit off. I don't know why. Anyways, it seems like there's slight differences when you use a software spectrum analyzer compared to the hardware display. So we'll just go over here to this, and then you can see what this looks like live. So this is 2:30 on Monday, February 27th. And this is what the signal looks like in Estacada, Oregon. I've noticed this signal just seems to get stronger and stronger. And there's a correlation to an antenna mast that was raised about 2 houses down, where they're housing some public safety equipment. There's also a yard directly behind me where I can see a antenna poking up between the bushes. Again, this is sort of up on a hillside, so these people might be doing communication systems and things like that. But I guess the thing that I find weird about this is that public safety would be more like 150 megahertz, close to that range. We're in that 400 to like 410 to 490 megahertz.
I was being very diplomatic at that time, dude. That area out there is full on Naziville, and this wasn't technology that I feel like had any good purpose at all, just to be clear.
I guess, I mean, not exactly that, but somewhere in the middle there is the various different ham radio bands. And so, if they're like doing public safety, like emergency services or fire services or police services or whatever, typically, not always, right, because there's a lot of different bands they use, but I've seen those like with mixes of 150 roughly, 450 roughly, not an exact number, but they call that like public safety bands. And then I see them using these 700 and 800 LTE bands that are allocated specifically for public safety sometimes too. But I've never heard of anybody in public safety using these 1680 to 1683 like I'm seeing here right now. And like I said, it just gets stronger as they raise the antenna masts. And
all right, guys. So you probably don't need to see much more of this live spectrum analyzer thing. So I'm just going to give you a quick little rundown of what was going on. So at the time, it was happening in a neighborhood, and I still didn't really understand some things about family members yet and about their role in things that are related to things like this. So, yeah, I didn't know what to make of it. I was just a frequency engineer staying at a family's house, and I was a guest, and so I just tried not to make a big deal out of it. But as I reviewed it more and more, and then I had to go back to that same place again in Estacada, and that time I brought other meters, and there was some obvious things that were going on. Again, I don't draw a direct correlation that just because I find a signal that there's intent, because it could be coming from a lot of different directions. But I don't have a strong faith that in that particular situation in Estacada that everybody was as ignorant as they played out to be. And some of the technology that I saw deployed on spectrum analyzers as well as EM meters did have a tasing type effect. It feels a little bit like when you're near the energy sources or wherever, whatever it seems to be going on, it makes you feel like your feet are being kind of tased. It gives you a lot of muscle twitches because it seems to be like a way to affect body electricity pretty aggressively. And the longer that I had to spend time in that environment, the more I realized that it was not by any coincidence that it was happening. And I'll try to leave it at that. I've already said enough about certain groups and people and what I believe is going on and what I've actually proven via data is going on. But because these people live in a universe where they can just act like they don't know what it is and go, I don't see that. I do not see that. I do not see. Yeah, they do not see. Yeah, they do not see. All right. So, anyways, that's what that's about. So there's no need to dwell on it much more than you've seen, unless you can freeze frame that shot and do whatever you want to. There's not much left of that one, anyways. But anyways, it's going to get better here, guys. So I just again remember I was just starting to make documentaries.
All right, welcome back. This is part 2. So continuing off of what we learned from the last part, and you'll want to have this report open, and I would recommend you sift through pages 25, 26, and 27, because that's what we're going to be covering in the DIA Control Defensive Behavior Report. So now what I'm trying to do here with this second part is to sort of bridge the gap on where this whole Montauk narrative bridges into the research that was done during this time. And so before I do that, it's important to discuss the Phoenix Project and Project Rainbow. So in the early 1950s, the Phoenix Project was merged with the remnants of Project Rainbow. The Phoenix Project was to delve further into the study of electromagnetic effects and their use in achieving stealth technology. The problem the Phoenix Project faced was how to keep this new technology from having such an adverse effect on humans involved in the experiments. The director of this new phase of the project was Dr. John von Neumann, brought back to oversee operations. He concentrated on the metaphysical side of the experiments in an attempt to determine what had gone wrong. He and his team worked for about 10 years on the problem, studying why humans had such a problem with intense electromagnetic fields, especially ones that were capable of producing the sort of effects seen in the Philadelphia experiment. What they found was that the human beings are born with a time reference point. This time reference point is linked to the electromagnetic fields native to the Earth and help orient man to the nature of the universe and how it operates. So those who are familiar, this would be probably one set different type of frequencies in relation to what I think that most people refer to as a Schumann resonance at 7.83 hertz. That's my own interpretation, and I believe that is discussed a little bit by Preston Nichols in some of his material, but I would have to get a refresher on that. But I'm fairly certain that this is tied into the Schumann resonance, what he's discussing here, for those who study that. And so to get back to this, it is a separate entity distinct from the physical body. When the generators were started on the Eldridge, the link to this point was severed, causing the crew of the Eldridge massive physical and mental trauma. So as a result of this electromagnetic, burst that severed the connection to the Schumann resonance, this is sort of what caused the trauma. And actually, the more I think about it, yes, that was part of it. It was actually related specifically to the Schumann resonance. So it was determined that the devices used in the original Philadelphia experiment had created an artificial reality around the Eldridge. Thus, the ship had removed from the normal plane of existence, rendering it invisible. The problem was that the new reality had no connection to our world, thus disorienting anyone within the field. In order to overcome this problem, a time reference point linking any potential inhabitant of the electromagnetic bottles created by the Project Rainbow technology back to their point of origin had to be developed. This problem was solved by giving the bottle a phony background, a false Earth to link to that would reduce any form of transdimensional disorder. A computer was used to recreate the time reference points of specific people and to generate a false electromagnetic background that would give the physical body something to lock onto. If this system failed, the physical and the mental body would separate, resulting in insanity. Now, I know that sounds very science fiction, and this story, I think, has always been kind of held in the fringes just because it just seems so unbelievable. But what I hope to demonstrate here by the time we're done with this presentation, which is going to be a little bit longer than the other couple that have been preceded it, is that you're going to see why this is relevant to now. This does connect to today. Okay, so but just to finish this up, this phase of the project was completed in 1967. A report was then sent to Congress stating that the human mind could be altered by the use of electromagnetics. Very important to remember. Okay, with development, one could create devices that would change the way people think. Congress, fearing the results of such experimentation could lead into mass mind control, refused any further funding for the project, and in 1969 ordered that the Phoenix project be disbanded. So,
well, gee, guys, in 1969, I believe, was when Science Applications International Corporation was founded by J. Robert Bannister. Ooh, wow. And I'm pretty sure he, yeah, was in the same branch that was behind a lot of those experiments. I'm starting to wonder. Starting to wonder. Not that I need to, but anyway.
these are just some devices that are kind of showing you like an evolution. So this is from Preston Nichols' book right here. And if you can actually freeze on this and zoom in, and I can actually provide a link to this someplace, and you can actually better yet, just the Montauk Project is probably the book that you can find this actual document and see this up close. So there's that. This is something I took from a YouTube clip, a screenshot I got from an actual manufacturer in modern day times. This is somebody that you can purchase this equipment from that's specifically related to the same purpose generally. And again, the whole notion of this is involving sort of weather balloon communications. Okay? And this falls within the frequency range that I measured. So, all right, so now that we've talked about that, I need to do a little bit of background before we dig into the actual report. So, in order to have this discussion regarding telepathy and ultra high frequency, we have to actually define ultra high frequency. So, I don't want to get into too many like numbers and everything, but just so you have this as your notes, 300 megahertz to 3,000 megahertz, or what is equivalent to 3 gigahertz, is what's considered ultra high frequency (UHF). Now, the key parts to remember is that this is involved for most, like in the United States especially, this is television broadcasting. So your television, when it tunes into a channel, it's in the UHF band. Cell phones, my own, the industry that I come from, all is operating in the UHF band. And 90% of the equipment that I use to operate in that UHF band and that I have experience with is within UHF. And that also includes satellite communications, which I guess is in that 1500, 16 to 1700 range. I think somewhere in that range as far as or 1.5, 1.6, 1.7 gigahertz. There's different slices within that range, okay, that covers that. Then you have personal radio services, personal radio services, including Wi-Fi, Bluetooth. You're talking about 2.4 and 2.5 gigahertz, which would be equivalent to 2400, 2500 megahertz. And you got your walkie-talkies, cordless phones, tons of things in this band, basically. Okay, so what this translates to is nearly everything you touch every day that has a wireless signal is UHF. It's an important thing to remember as we're discussing this overall theme, because remember what they were dealing with here. They were talking about space-time manipulation, creating manipulations of time, creating perception manipulation and ultimately mind control. And they were trying to study how these things were not only useful for weather modification, but also for mind control. Okay. So now we need to also discuss cybernetics and hive mind, because these things tie together. Because ultimately, when you're talking about a mass population mind control system, you would want to exploit what's called cybernetics, or a hive mind, or the collective consciousness, or the collective intelligence. So the way to look at this too is that, within that collective consciousness, really it's sort of like a network with nodes, and it's exactly the same way that other computer network nodes are. In fact, most technologies, the more you drill these issues down and you start discussing the more esoteric and hidden things regarding human consciousness, you really break it down to realize that technology isn't an evolution so much as it's a de-evolution. All it can do is mirror the way humans already interact with one another on an energetic level. We have spheres of influence, okay? That's what the collective consciousness and collective intelligence is. But there is a network map involved, meaning there are nodes that pass along messages to other nodes and pass along messages to other nodes. And it works like a tributary system in rivers and lakes and oceans, okay? That's cybernetics and hive mind. And so in order to master this realm, you would have to have all the critical data points to understand how energetics work, how people's energetic influences affect one another, and that would involve very specific DNA, RNA data, and also having a master of the domain over radio frequency. Every single part of our human body interacts with frequency from the top down. You can find ELF, UHF, they all play a part, whether it be telepathic communications, whether it be behavior modifications, whether it be light frequency and how you perceive light. All of these things fall within the spectrum, okay? So electroencephalography, EEG, sorry, I butchered that. And then there's magnetoencephalography, MEG. So these are two terms that I just want you to sort of maybe take a pause, read through this. Just a quick little snapshot of this. EEG is electromagnetic, whereas, as electrophysiology, and then magneto is more mapping magnetic fields and with magnetometers. Sorry, that's a mouthful. They use these things called squids. This is getting into a really technical conversation that really isn't appropriate here, but these are terms that you're going to want to become familiar with, because when we're talking about measurements, how do you make a measurement of one's brain activity or how one has a PK or psychokinetic potential? What are the mechanisms in place to measure it? What are the numbers? This is how they achieve the measurement of these numbers. Okay, so not everybody has access to this equipment. That's important to remember. So let's just get into the material. So now that we have some background, okay? So telepathy and ultra high frequency, according to this report, starting on page 25, if you want to follow along, it says that they were developing labs for monitoring, testing, and studying telepathic communications in the Soviet Union back in 1962. And that in 1963, they ran a test between two cities in Russia that ran a distance of 1,200 miles with the aid of a ultra shortwave radio transmitter. Remember? UHF, ultra shortwave radio transmitter, ultra, okay? So, as a result, the doctor was convinced that his experiments and those he conducted jointly with the Brain Institute offered scientific and telepathic communications. His next goal was to identify the nature of brain energy that produces it. So I didn't want to get into brain energy and this sort of the psychoenergetics aspects yet, but that's going to be important later to start thinking about bioplasma, psychoenergetics, Wilhelm Reich, orgone, and even maybe a little bit a little bit of Royal Reich, but I don't necessarily think it's relevant to this discussion right away, but those are some people you might want to start reading up on. And then, so getting down to this though, it says, so theorizing on the above experiments, one Soviet scientist suggested that telepathic impulses are radiated along the lines of bits of information in a cybernetic system. So remember what we talked about earlier, a nodal system, a cybernetic hive mind system that they can exploit when it's already existing within nature. What's at the root of the flower of life, what's at the root of human energetics, what the Egyptians know, what a lot of the mystics know, this all sort of ties together. What you're seeing with our technology is a mirroring of occult wisdom and what natural human energetics are known about but are hidden from most people, I believe. That's the hypothesis. So another scientist is known to be working on the idea of the time as energy, speculating that telepathic transmissions may be propagated through a supposed time energy system rather than through the electromagnetic field. So I think you could be saying that what they're talking about here is making an argument for scalar or longitudinal waveforms, but it wasn't really that well understood. And that's why it's important to understand Wilhelm Reich and his studies, because they relate to bioplasma, biocommunications, and longitudinal waves and scalar energy. This is why these things are all sort of merging into this cohesive narrative here, where you're seeing how this information has been buried for decades. So it says the Soviet research into biocommunications phenomenon does not appear to be earthbound and limited to inner space, but apparently extends to outer space as well. So they were doing telepathic tests, and they realized that you could pass telepathic communication when they were outside of the Earth orbit. And so you have to wonder why that is. Is it perhaps that modern technology, modern communications equipment is inhibiting some of our abilities, because if they're operating in the megahertz or the UHF waves, then perhaps what we've actually done with our technology is intercepted natural communication in place of, inorganic radio communication that replaces natural waveforms. It's something to think about, right? Because there has to be an explanation for why some people can do things that are psychic and others can't, or things that are in that realm. So continuing on, though, it says there are reports that the Soviets are training their cosmonauts in telepathy to back up electronic equipment while in outer space. One of these backup schemes is known to involve coded telepathic messages. This method was previously demonstrated in March 1967 when a coded telepathic message was flashed from Moscow to Leningrad. That is mind-blowing when you think about it, right? So moving on to part 7 here, it says there are numerous reports on Soviet applications of clairvoyance, hypnotism, dowsing, and military operations. In the case of dowsing, this is also not unprecedented, since U.S. forces have employed dowsing in Vietnam for locating enemy tunnels and caches.
Hello, me. It's me. Anyways, yeah. Dowsing is a thing. Did you hear that, guys? There are numerous reports on Soviet applications of clairvoyance, hypnotism, dowsing, etc. in military operations. In the case of dowsing, this is also not unprecedented, since U.S. forces have employed dowsing in Vietnam for locating enemy tunnels and caches. So just think that through.
With respect to brain and mind control conditioning, a recent report indicates that the Soviet Union has made great strides in emotional training and conditioning. Soldiers are being taught to get their own emotional tone in battle and stress situations. Remember this, guys, because there's ways that you can beat these things, because they've trained people to do this. So there's hope. Further, astronauts are being taught through such mental conditioning to distort time and to offset boredom in outer space. These all sound a little bit outlandish, but when you start placing the data in context of what we know so far, what we know to be in use today, it starts to add up, right? Just saying. So we'll keep going. Okay, now this involves animals and various responses to stimuli. So man's sight and hearing are limited to a relatively small range of wavelengths. Other living beings often possess much wider perceptive abilities, both with regard to sharpness of perception and range of stimuli. For example, dogs hear higher sound frequencies than man. Bats and dolphins orient themselves by means of an ultrasound radar. Bees perceive colors in the ultraviolet part of the spectrum. Some snakes perceive minute differences in temperature and orient themselves by means of thermoreceptors. Certain living beings even react to stimuli in which man is absolutely insensitive. Okay, so we're dealing in an environment where spectrum is being used on such a broad scale and of all varying types. We don't even necessarily understand just how much this potential hiving, I guess, and replication of natural bypassing of communications is even playing a part within the animal kingdom, things that are non-human, right? Animals, dogs, cats, whatever it might be. Certainly, if they're doing tests on humans, they're going to want to see if they can crack an animal, because an animal won't be able to fight it if you think about it. And if you're doing like remote viewing, remote action, and you can get a cat's brainwave measured, for example, or a dog's brainwave measured, and that's all it takes is to have their EEG data of their brain mapped out, then yeah, you could probably see through the visual cortex of a household pet, and that could be the hack. It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it. So it says here at the bottom, says such application and control could be used in the detection and identification of animate objects or humans through brain wave interactions, mass hypnosis, or mind control through long distance telepathy, thermal receptors, and sensitivity to changes in magnetic, electrical, gravitational fields. Right? According to the observations made by Dr. Montague Ullman during a trip to the Soviet bloc countries in the fall of 1970s, Soviet biocommunications investigations are effectively combining the use of modern and sophisticated technology with basic pragmatic approaches. This was evident, he states, in their approach to long distance telepathy experiments, where the results were analyzed in physiological EEG. That's what this is, electroencephalographic. That's what I showed you earlier in that slide if you want to go back to it. So, EEG data, as well as psychological task performance, the transmission of data in Morse code. Check that out, right? Because that's relevant if you're studying Project Scan8 and projects that involve like remote viewing involving GPS coordinates and map coordinates and things of that nature. Dr. Ullman further observed that the Soviet researchers seemed intent on confirming the existence of a new form of energy referred to as bioplasma, which they maintain is characteristic of life processes and represents matter in the form of an integrated system of elementary charged particles. Such energy, through interaction with other systems, is thought to provide the basis for biocommunications. So this is the workaround. It's the scalar, the longitudinal, it's the orgone, it's the DOR, POR concept that you've heard a lot of people talk about in more, I guess you could say, fringe circles of science that's being studied. So getting to the next part here, it says the above commentary documents a clear case for research in the Soviet Union and parapsychology. It is significant because of the energy and resources being allotted for this work in the Soviet Union, and because its military implications, especially in mind manipulation and controlled offensive behavior. This is AKA mind control. I don't know what else you call that. The more sinister aspects of paranormal research appear to be surfacing in the Soviet Union. Why else would a Soviet researcher make the statement, tell America that the psychic potential of man must be used for good? I think that's important to remember because, one of our friends from the Soviet Union at that time during the Cold War was trying to reach out to us and tell us to please, please, please let us know that psychic potential of man must be used for good, because they were studying these things and they understood it very well. And they know the danger of what can happen when it's being abused. So just to wrap this up, I want to, like I told you, I was going to try to bring this all full circle. So is this sci-fi universe that they were discussing in the 1972 becoming a reality? Well, you tell me. This is from Wikipedia involving synthetic telepathy research. I'll leave a citation down below or a little quote thing that you can click on to get to this if you want to read more. But it says in 2002, Kevin Warwick had an array of 100 electrodes fired into his nervous system in order to link his nervous system into the internet to investigate enhancement possibilities. So he uploaded his data, his EEG. That's what electrodes, like they have these little, well, I can't say that is specifically how they did that technique is, but it's sort of like taking an EEG and then taking that data pattern and then sending it to the internet, okay? Allowing the AI or the central computer or whatever it is to reroute his brain data. With this in place, Warwick successfully carried out a series of experiments with the electrodes, also implanted into his wife's nervous system. They conducted the first direct electronic communication experiment between the nervous system of two humans. That was 14 years ago. It's 2016 today. Excuse me, that was 15 years ago. It's 2017 today. Okay. So research into synthetic telepathy using sub-vocalization is taking place at University of California, Irvine under lead scientist Mike Desmura. The first such communication took place in the 1960s using EEG to create Morse code using brain alpha waves. As we discussed earlier in the other article, this is just some verification that happened. And then the part that I really think that we can leave this with is on September 3rd, 2014, scientists reported that direct communication between human brains was possible over extended distances through internet transmission of EEG signals. Now, that takes that 2002 study to the next level, because when you really get down to what that translates to, the EEG process is all it takes to create a unique signature on your brain. Now, or a MEG, right? This combination of data. Now you have a unique signature on your body, your brain, you're mapped. So what they've determined is that they can effectively map out all your energetics, your frequency sets, okay? Map it out, transmit it to another person across the internet. It's pretty mind-boggling. Sounds like a sci-fi film, but there you are. That happened. And if you want the citations for how that was done, there you go. The links in the comments section below. But so we're talking about how this all translates to UHF and why this is relevant to telepathy. Well, because you have to think about, since we have a multitude of processes that exist within human bodies, that all involves frequency. Some involve things like ELF, right? So you've probably heard like the pineal gland and your alpha, beta, theta, gamma states, right? I'll get into that in another article, by the way. So that's not for this one, but it's relative to this though, because that's one way, that's one waveform, right? Not waveform, but one set of frequencies or whatever that you're being used for that specific aspect of your brain. But see, there's other resonant frequencies within your body. Now, I don't have that map specifically. I've seen a lot of different data on that. It's all varying. It's not always consistent. For example, I see that 10 hertz is listed as as an alpha state, but then I've seen other studies that said, well, that's for a lot of people, but not most people. And for some people, it's close to that, but it's not precisely that. So for some people, 10 hertz might be their idle alpha state. I've heard that people that have stronger psychic potential tend to idle closer to 8 or 8.25 in that range. I mean, I've seen all kinds of studies. So I guess what I'm saying, though, is that it's worth discussing. But when you think about this in terms of UHF, all of these studies that we were talking about earlier, right, in this DIA report, now let's go back a little bit, they were all talking about this here, telepathic experiments involving UHF. Okay, please, now think about this, okay? UHF. So we're talking about studies dealing with UHF, and now today, like I told you, all right, now today, everything we use basically is UHF. Everything. Your cell phone, your television stations, your Wi-Fi, your Bluetooth, your GPS, it's all UHF. And that's what back in 1972 they were proving out in their experimentations were responsible for telepathic communication. So what I'm trying to hypothesize here a little bit, or at least present as at least a reasonable notion when we discuss the idea, even though it's a loaded term, of mind control or frequency influence, if you want to call it that, there's plausible data here to suggest that these things have happened, and we wouldn't even been aware of it. I think that there's a possibility, a very strong likelihood, just because this is human nature, that a lot of people do understand this intrinsically and are exploiting it. But I think there's a lot of people, like, for example, I was in the wireless industry for 20 years, and this is news to me. I'm just now thinking this through a little bit and going, wow, yeah, okay. Now that I know that they were studying telepathy, like, back in 1972 and even the late 60s, and it involved UHF frequencies. And now I understand how some of these interactions involve psychic telepathic communication, and there's little interactions between these plays of frequency, and especially when it comes to human energetics, then yeah, I have to ask myself, are these things, having an effect on our natural telepathic communication? So if these things are, then what are other things like infrared, ultraviolet, ELF, extremely low frequency, super high frequency, right? Satellites, and start getting into like microwaves and the gigahertz. So, and we'll get there soon. But again, like I said, this could be hours and hours, and I really just want to make it digestible. We're going to start talking a little bit more into this whole bioplasma realm and connect to things more like in Carillion photography and how that all relates to psychic phenomenon, energy signatures, things of that nature in the next part. I really appreciate everybody listening to this material, because it's taken a long time to come to these conclusions, and not conclusions necessarily, but to at least come to a reasonable hypothesis that can sort of, I think this helps validate a lot of the data that a lot of people have been discussing for years. And it just, once you get the right assembly of information together, you can start drawing correlations that make sense, and maybe we can start coming up with some solutions to correct some things that might be going on. So part 3, we'll start digging deeper into Carillion photography, bioplasma, and everything. And again, thank you, everybody.
Okay. Yep. Sorry. Any questions about what we've watched up until now while I have a break in between these clips? Sorry about the bot activity. I actually went to go get some fruit and a cup of tea, and as soon as I stand up, it's almost like somebody was just waiting to push the bot button. Then I come back here and I'm like, oh man. So anybody, we don't have to talk about the trolls, guys. Sorry I did it. But any questions? You want me to go over anything, or did you want me to freeze frame any of those slides so you can get screenshots, things like that? I'd be happy to, but otherwise, I'll just keep going on to part 3. And you go ahead and ask things in between if you want to, anyways, or while the clip's playing, and I can always pause it really briefly and answer you, or just wait till the end. But this one I don't think is very long either. Oh yeah, it is actually. This one's 20 minutes, so I think I get into a lot of material here. Again, guys, if you've already seen my energetics material, I don't know how much new this is going to be, but the overall report has some information I don't always cover in the other energetics things. And remember, guys, I'll often say, I don't know how you measure that. Well, that was back in 2017. I did not know how to measure it. I didn't even know there was equipment that could measure it. I just heard that people could. So I had to do, quite a bit of research until I actually found those types of devices like the Helionosis Life Meter and the BioWell GDV system. Now I can actually do the measurements. And so again, if you hear me say that, it's because this was done many years ago. Anyways, on to it.
Okay, welcome back. This is part 3. We're going to discuss bioplasma and Kirlian photography. Frankly, I'm not sure of the exact pronunciation. And also, this is going to tie into Wilhelm Reich and concepts involving orgone and how that might connect to bioplasma. Before we get into this, though, the reason why I'm bringing up Wilhelm Reich at all, even though he's not a part of this actual DIA report, is because I just keep seeing repeated references in a lot of these documents about bioplasma, research into bioplasma, into chi, things of that nature involving a more etheric energy that's not electricity as we know it, where you're used to having a positive and negative with a black wire or red wire. There's things that we've become used to associating with electricity. So that you can measure volts. You have a voltmeter. You can go say that's 12 volts, 5 volts, whatever. But when you're dealing with the bioplasma and the orgone, the methodology behind measuring it, what those increments look like, what you'd even call those units of measurement, that's when things get a little bit, difficult, right? Because how do you prove something unless you have a unit of measure? And how do you establish a unit of measure in the current scientific community climate, I guess you could say. So there are people that are developing devices, but I don't really want to get into a lot of theory because I haven't had the opportunity to get into these things myself in great detail. I have been using things that are considered to be orgone devices that involve a combination of crystals and copper. Some involve electricity, others claim to be scalar devices, but I'm not going to get into that here in this particular presentation, except to say that based on my own studies and things that I've done in purely hypothetical, non-measurable environments, I have seen differences that would actually demonstrate that a lot of these things have some validity to them. So before I get into that, though, a quick review of where we were involving this Phoenix project, right? I'm going to have to go way back to the first part here, okay? So these experiments here, right, where we discuss these radio sonde devices, okay, because you're going to want to do a little bit of refresher on this before we go. Or if you haven't seen this part of the presentation that preceded it, you're going to want to become familiar with this material, because we're going to discuss Wilhelm Reich and the Phoenix Project, how this all ties into, this aspect ties into with using these devices, the this network, I guess you could say, the underlying network that makes some of this bioplasma possible. Now, these are hypotheticals we're dealing with here. So if you're following along in the document, this particular page that deals with bioplasma and Kirlian photography is on page 33. And so I'm going to read this really quick, and then I'm going to start jumping into the Wilhelm Reich and the connection to Phoenix Project and Project Rainbow. Okay. So I'll just read through this really quick and just do some highlights. 4 and 5 are less important. 6 is the big one that we want to pay attention to. But just to give you a little bit more background, it says cosmonauts, when in orbit, seem to be able to communicate telepathically more easily with each other than with people on Earth. A PSI, which is short for Psychic Faculty Training System, has been incorporated in the cosmonaut training program, but the news provided no further details. Some informal reports relayed to Ostrander and Schroeder indicate that the Soviets are working on psi systems for space use, involving not just telepathy, but also precognition. Yeah, pretty trippy, huh? So So, you can kind of draw some conclusions right there that if you're in an environment that is not polluted with ultra high frequencies, that psychic ability, psychic function, things like telepathy, precognition are possible, and they seem to be less inhibited. So I think you can draw some pretty clear correlations there. When these things are all flying around us, these frequencies, there seems to be I guess you could call it just interference, right? Just the same way that two networks that are using the same frequencies that do not talk to one another are just going to interfere with one another. That would be the same thing with technology and human consciousness or human telepathic abilities. We have a technology interference barrier until they establish handoffs between us and the technology. So if you're doing the studying, you can kind of determine that that's what they've done. They're making them to where they don't interfere with one another and they coexist, but through I guess you could call it a digital matrix. So let's get a little bit lofty. We're talking about a totally different topic. So let's kind of get back to this involving the bioplasma because it's still relevant, right? Or rather, that piece is still relevant to this. So section 5, it says Kogan's systematic parapsychology research could also be a potential value to the overall Soviet cybernetic research and development program. And remember that term cybernetic, if you need to go back and get a refresher, it's in the last section. Efforts being made to optimize sensory inputs in the interest of controlling the quality of human motor activity are well known, as is the ultimate Soviet goal of achieving a perfect cybernetic man. So they were interested in controlling human motor activity. I don't know what else you call that. They wanted to give the ability to turn a human into a robot and to provide, pain or relief, the ultimate anger or, height of elation. They wanted to be able to control it. It is of interest that both conventional psychology and parapsychology programs are headquartered in Moscow, although, as depicted in the personnel and institution section, the trend is decentralization. It is probably no coincidence and supports the view that the latter program should not be taken lightly. It's funny that he talk about how it's decentralized and everything, because I think you'll see that a lot in the States too, is that's one of the ways that they're able to keep a lot of this work undercover. And one of the reasons why I think these things are derided in Wikipedia, when you start looking up these things in Wikipedia, they always call them pseudoscience and they sort of trash on it, and they very seldom offer specific numbers that are conclusive. So I think even though I cite Wiki a lot of times, I want people to understand it's only because I'm trying to find just some sort of common point of reference that's sort of, I guess, global. But keep in mind, too, that those databases are very heavily edited by just about anybody. And there are people that's their full-time job, is just to edit those entries. So again, I do use them, but I would like people just to use them as a framework to go do their own research, to just kind of use them as general definitions. But especially when you talk about Wilhelm Reich, Wikipedia really tends to kind of do a hit piece almost. So I'm not here to tell you Wilhelm Reich is good or bad or anything like that, but certainly what he was doing was relevant. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gone to such lengths to do things to him. So before we get into Wilhelm Reich, though, let's finish this up. It says, as mentioned above, the Soviets seem preoccupied with the search for energy that carries or facilitates telepathy transmission. Is it electromagnetic or not? That's key, right? Because we're talking about bioplasma in relation to orgone. This is something that they had as a big question mark. And then a lot of people pretend this is still a question mark, but I think that's merely to the general population. There's probably people who have figured this out quite well. The search for this unknown energy has led the Soviets to Kirlian photography, named after its inventors. The Kirlians developed a technique of photographing with a high-frequency electrical field involving a specially constructed high-frequency spark generator tuned up and down between 75 to 200,000 electrical oscillations per second. The first photographs showed turquoise and reddish-yellow patterns of flares coming out of specific channels within the leaves. A magnified picture of a finger showed craters of light and flares. By the 1960s, research on bioluminescence revealed by Kirlian photography was going on in many Soviet universities. Perfected techniques of photographing the play of high-frequency currents on humans, plants, and animals, as well as on inanimate matter, have set the Soviets on some striking discoveries about the energetic nature of man. Bioplasma is a term coined by the Soviets for bioluminescent phenomenon or energy. So I think that's a really good part here, to really kind of focus on before we get into the next section. So bioplasma is a term coined by the Soviets for bioluminescent phenomenon or energy. Okay, so scientists found.
Guys, if you've been following my material, you would know that me phrasing it this way is nearly laughable because I understand so much more about it today. So 5 years makes a big difference, guys. Like when you get deep into this and you really go through this research, then you go get some equipment to study it with. It's like you went to college in energy, I think. I think what I've done up until now to me feels like I spent the last 5 years, like, um, like actually going to some sort of like school of esoteric, what do you want to call it? Esoteric energy, bioplasma, energetics schooling, whatever you want to call it. All these things they talk about in sort of like Eastern mysticism relative to what the human body is really as far as electromagnetic fields and resonant beings of frequency. 100% true. But it just took me time to acquire the equipment, get out in the field and measure some things. And I'm not even close to being done with that. That's actually, guys, I've been saying I'm going to do that. I'm going to do some more energy measurements soon. Okay. Just so you know. So just to show you guys that this is the research has gone much further since I did this article. If you haven't seen my energetic series, I'll show you what the new model of this is. So everything we're talking about here, Kirlian photography, I have something that's a derivative of it. It's called Kirlian. It's not Kirlian, but it is. It's Kirlian GDV, gas discharge method. And it does it by measuring your fingertips. And it'll take not the tips necessarily, but right around here, this area. You do measurements on this glass electrostatic charge plate. And it doesn't feel like anything, but it takes an image of the energy field. And then you can draw correlations to their entire body based on what goes on in your fingers. And it was the Russians that were innovating these things back then. And even to this day, these devices that are being made aren't by Americans. They're coming from over there. They're the ones that still understand it to this day. And we're the ones that are scratching our heads. It's, guys, I said it in my article. If you ignore energetics, it'll be at your peril. If you're a country that cares about what's going on, then you'll want to. Here's the thing. I'm not saying this like you should be threatened by that. I'm saying that the Russians learned their lessons. Doesn't mean all of them did. But what I'm telling you is that they gave warnings to America even during the Cold War that said, when you get into this frequency thing, when you get into your energetics research, we just want you to know you don't have to like us, but you must use this for good. If you do anything negative with it, I don't think you know what you're stepping into. I know what it means now. This isn't even being like mystic or anything esoteric. The karma cycle is real. What makes karma, I will explain karma to you in frequency and miles. The earth is 7.83 hertz of the Schumann resonance. Your brain operates on a nearly identical frequency. So whether you accept the round model or not, it doesn't matter to me because it's irrelevant to this discussion, and it's irrelevant to if you understand energy and perception the way that I do. It's all true and none of it's true because it's all perception. And what happens when you emit a thought form, you're thinking about something, it ruminates in your brain, it outputs. Well, right here in the center of your brain is where the pineal gland, but you have this full-on energy system that actually sends a ping up to here. You receive pings in through your two eyes, which is energy, because really, even when you see light, you're really just inputting energy, but you're also outputting energy. And why do so many people, like, maybe if you meet somebody that you like or whatever, or whether it's for whatever reason, the eyes tell you a lot. It draws you in, and you probably won't want to have a conversation for very long with a person who doesn't at least have whatever, right? Like there has to be something about the energy that's going on within their eyes. And that's because of this bioplasma thing that's going on. I mean, that's where you find whether or not somebody's like being straight up with you. You kind of give them a look. It's how a lot of our interaction is done. I'm not just saying that for whatever reasons. I'm saying that so this process, as the signal travels up and you have human brainwave that matches Earth brainwave. Remember, Schumann resonance 7.83 hertz, between alpha theta about 8 hertz, very close together. Then when you do this and the signal emits from the brain, it's this waveform that's traveling. It's about 8 hertz, 8 cycles per second, and it travels. 8 hertz travels 22,000 miles and plus. And that means that if you, what occurs is, as it goes all the way around and comes back in, and again, it's extremely low frequency, it penetrates everything. There's no Faraday cage you can build that blocks out brainwave. Just doesn't exist. ELF won't block brainwave. You'll still emit that pattern. It'll travel all the way around the world where it finds its way back to sender. That's what it's really doing. It's going all the way around the world and coming back to you. That's why karma. It's really less of a religious concept, except it becomes religion because, well, you're getting what you're receiving. You sent it out, it's going to come back in. It's just like that. And it's because your thoughts, your thought forms attached to the universal plasma field that we all exist in and share. It creates us and we create it simultaneously. And that's how the system works. It's all collection of human brainwave that literally creates the earth. They just keep going in various different directions because we're seeing and inputting these energies into this convex lens that is our eye. You get the arcs, you get the shape of it. And then as it comes into here, hits the pineal gland, now you have your prism, your 3D prism. Because back here, once it hits the very tip of the pyramid, where your third eye is, whatever you want to call it, your pineal gland, that pineal gland, if we're going to be more scientific, is surrounded by piezo-responsive crystals, literally just like the ones that I carry around. Well, they're not in my hand right now, but they usually are. And there's little pieces of crystal, like little tiny little bits of it, that once that electrical signal goes, then it pushes out the plasma with the color and all the spectrum of color, as or what we call color, what we perceive as color. All of it goes. This is the phenomenon of rainbows. All of it is human generated, if you ask me. Yes, there's Earth is involved, of course, but with a rainbow, I think what you're really seeing is human energy links traveling from one side of the arc to the other. Anyways, I'm going to keep going here.
Found that the illnesses tend to show up in advance as a
Sorry, guys, hang on.
disordered play of flares from the bioplasma long before they manifest in the physical body. So, they were able to determine that before the person actually felt it, you could see through Kirlian photography, the diseases begin to manifest internally. It's pretty interesting. It says, according to Ostrander and Schroeder, the Soviets may be attempting to link Kirlian photography with computers.
That's what I have, guys.
To instantly analyze the spectra of colors appearing in varied color flares in the body.
Brilliant.
You can be certain that's been
connected
done
to a
by now
computer.
because this paper was written in 1972. So, sorry. All right, so let's talk about Wilhelm Reich, right? So that's the only page we're going to cover in the report, so you don't have to worry about having that in front of you now. But so let's go into this here really quick. The Phoenix Project actually gets its start in the late 40s. It was an attempt to control weather. This is from Bibliotecas, by the way, and I think this is culled largely from Preston Nichols' work in the Phoenix Project. So you'll probably find a lot of this info in the book. So Reich is said to have been a brilliant man, credited with discovering the highly controversial orgone energy. Orgone energy is also known as life or orgasmic energy and is very different from more ordinary electromagnetic energy. So again, making a distinction between what we commonly refer to as electromagnetic, which deals with electricity and magnetics, space-time, and this other etheric energy that he considered to be more life-based or through the human orgasm. He claimed that orgone energy could cure cancer, a finding that didn't find wide acceptance with his colleagues. Reich also stated that orgone energy has related to quote-unquote cosmic energy and with the Newtonian concept of the ether. Needless to say, his theories were widely criticized by his fellow scientists. The ether is a Victorian concept that refers to a hypothetical substance that suffused all of space. It served as a medium for light and other forms of radiant energy. This ether was a popular concept and was used by more than one science fiction writer as a way to explain space travel. For example, E. Doc Smith sprinkles references to the ether all through his Lensman novels. With further research, Reich found that orgone energy was responsible for storms and bad weather. Deadly orgone, or DOR, was the term used to describe the dead energy found within the violent thunderstorms and hurricanes. The dead energy was also found within people as well. Active people had plenty of orgone energy, while those who were depressed or sullen had an excess of DOR energy. So I think you should ruminate on that a little bit, because especially when you deal in the psychic community, you hear people discuss energy harvesting, and this notion that you have people that are sort of intentionally placed in trauma states, or there's a culture of trauma or a culture of stress that's intentionally designed to extract this DOR energy. And so if you feel like that's a plausible notion, then you would have to ask, what would be the use for the extraction of that DOR energy? Well, they were doing weather experiments, mind control experiments, so you can kind of get an intuition about what that was really about, right? If you're extracting this deadly orgone, if you have a population of people that manifest DOR energy instead of POR, right? So DOR is what you get from just being lazy, from being dormant, from not getting enough sunlight. So we basically made a lifestyle that is reinforced a deadly orgone harvesting matrix, when you really think about it. And that's the only reason why I'm trying to bring this up here when we talk about bioplasma, because again, people talk about our energy harvesting, but are there mechanics to it? Are there actual 3D reality things that we can assign to these methodologies behind DOR extraction? So if you agree that this is a plausible theory, then we have to talk about this next part again, and then review the material that we've already discussed, okay? After extensive research, Reich finally developed a device that would break up concentrations of DOR energy. When set up with a weather balloon, this device would dissipate or deflect thunderstorms. Armed with Reich's Stormbuster, the U.S. government created a device called a radiosonde. This device consisted of several sensors and a transmitter that could broadcast across several bands to build up either build up orgone energy or disrupt DOR energy. With it, the government could control the weather. It should be pointed out that any device capable of transmitting both orgone and DOR energy could be used to affect people as well. It is possible that the Phoenix Project was also looking into methods of population control. Supposedly, the Soviet Union had conducted extensive experiments on selected populations by broadcasting orgone or DOR energy into the area to try and alter the emotional content of the population. So yes, DOR does have a correlation to mind control, because you're dealing with an etheric energy that is robbing you of your life force. That is a form, I guess you could say, or at least a relative, I think, hypothetically, of this thing that they call bioplasma or chi. So just to get back really quick, so you understand that there is a method behind this, what he talked about with radiosondes. Remember, this is a radiosonde. This is all part of the mechanisms that make radiosondes work. This is what it looked like when Preston Nichols was writing about it, and this is what it looks like today. All right, just a little bit more in this section. So let's talk in a little bit more detail about Kirlian photography, because I'm not an expert in this, okay? So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. I don't know a lot about ultraviolet, IR, and Kirlian photography. So I just called these little bits here because I believe there is a connection between bioplasma and some of what people call like aural or RF photography, Kirlian photography.
Yeah, guys, in case you don't know, like I actually have acquired a form of Kirlian GDV camera system. I'm going to reiterate it again. So every time you hear me saying like, well, I don't know how to do that, it's because this is from 5 years ago. And I got my GDV camera like a year ago, and I got the helionosis meter about 2 years ago. So I've had a good amount of time with both devices, although I really do need to spend much more time before I start like sharing like tons and tons of information about what my thoughts are, because all of it is very, even though you're able to measure things, having basis of comparisons is really just among a very small group of people through which you can even share the information with, let alone create any determinations about what is good, bad, or indifferent as far as your readings go. So you're just sort of left with making interpretations independently for the most part, which is fine, but that just requires collecting lots and lots of data, and then, publishing case studies and then making comparisons of one set of data to another. For example, like, how does one person's biofield compare to another when one has a certain, or an individual's, when they're ill versus when they're feeling really good, or they're well exercised? What happens when you're in a certain environment, and do certain people change environments? that's all things you can study at an energetic level with these systems like the LM4 helionosis meter or the BioLGDV. There was even a water study that was done with Professor Emoto and Dr. Karatov, the inventor of that BioWell camera, where they show you like how people change weather. They show you with their meters. Again, it's subject to interpretation, but the longer you spend time with it, the more you realize, yeah, there's something going on where people can change weather. And that was the research that was studying it. It was Reich. It was, all of those Phoenix Project things, basically figuring out what you could do with the human body, as far as a harp. I mean, if you think about it, if you know what harp is, all harp is doing, like many technologies, is replicating something people can do already. Why do tribal societies and natives and things like that, Native Americans especially, practice rain dances? Why do they believe in rain dance rituals? Why do they believe that through a series of incantations and doing dancing up and down? Why would they think that energetically they could actually create weather events? I think if you understand that you actually have electrical fields, magnetic, or that's not a word. You have bioplasma that flows through your body, and you can create energy just through doing things like waving your hands like this, or whatever. And if you notice, like some of the things that Native Americans do, especially that'd be like a hey yo, whoa, whoa, yeah, hey yo, that voice, and then on top of it, doing like a matching rhythm with the hands. Think about what that really translates to. Think about what you're really doing with that, and you'll start to begin to realize that yeah, they are creating like a vibratory energy. They're synchronizing brainwave, and in turn, they can probably change the weather. And they wouldn't be doing it for centuries if they didn't actually get results. That's the fallacy of our culture sometimes, is we are very dismissive, myself included, for many years, until I got the test equipment to measure it. And that's one of the reasons why I feel so strongly about sharing it with people, because I want more people to see that there is a very definite bridge between spirituality and what you believe in, and science, and it's a real thing. And the more we can actually witness that bridge and see that bridge, and understand what it actually translates to, it actually opens the world up for to be a much better place. And this is why I think that there was all that warnings between the Soviet Union and America during the Cold War, where they said, fine, we may be enemies, but we just want you Americans to know you don't want to abuse this technology. You don't want to mess with it in negative ways, because they understand the karma cycle of science. So they're trying to put out, as not everybody, guys, but you'll find there's more people out there that take it seriously. So they're conscious of the energy they put out. They're conscious of their thoughts. They're conscious of what they believe, and they don't want to re-radiate negativity. They don't want to re-radiate thought forms that involve war and strife and harm. Think that through a little bit, because thoughts do become things. Thoughts matter. Words matter. It all matters. Everything.
People's auras, and how this relates to this diagram here. So please keep this in mind as we're having this discussion, right? This diagram involving DOR, POR, your emotions, your thought form energy, how much exercise you get, how much light you get, all plays into this, right? Because it's part of mind control. You could create a loop of energy if you think about it. So Kirlian photography is a collection of photographic techniques used to capture the phenomenon of electrical discharges. So we already discussed this in the other part. I won't get into this, but here's an example of what that looks like with two coins, right? You can see there's like a life force that sort of emanates from these metals. It says that Kirlian believed that images created by this photography might depict a conjectural energy field or aura thought by some to surround living things. Kirlian and his wife were convinced their images showed a life force or energy field. So people were investigating these methods, and you can still find places to do Kirlian photography today. But again, these things kind of wind up in the new age field and kind of marginalized and pushed aside. So there's only certain communities that really get into these things. And meanwhile, you have people that have more engineering backgrounds who really kind of, if they understood that there's engineering concepts that are underlying these things, they might actually give them more credence, validity. You might actually find these things more adopted on a larger scale. So as long as we're talking about this, and auras and
Not
chi,
bad like
right?
it is
Because and actually, this is interesting. If you go onto CIA.gov FOI library and look up QI GONG Qi Gong, they did a lot of studies on this. Okay, so this all relates, I believe, to Kirlian photography, auras, and bioplasma, and what the research of Wilhelm Reich was discussing. Because scientists such as Beverly Rubik have explored the idea of a human biofield using Kirlian photography research, attempting to explain the Chinese discipline of Qigong. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Qigong teaches that there is a vitalistic energy called qi that permeates all living things. The idea of qi as its own sort of field, not simply a creature's electromagnetic field, has been mostly disregarded by the scientific community. So this constant theme, you notice, right? If you can't measure it with a voltmeter, an EEG or an MEG, it just doesn't exist. But we know it does. No, I personally believe it does, and I believe that chi and life force and bioplasma personally, I think that a lot of it is belief based, a lot of it is thought form based, because your thoughts become things. So getting to conclude this one here. In parapsychology and spiritual practice, an aura is the field of a subtle luminous radiation surrounding a person or object, like the halo or aureola in religious art. The depiction of such an aura often connotes a person or a particular power or holiness. It is said that all objects and all living things manifest such an aura. Often it is held to be perceptible, whether spontaneous or the practice. Such perception is at times linked with the third eye of Indian spirituality. Various writers associate various personality traits with the colors of different layers of the aura. It has also been described as a map of the thoughts and feelings surrounding a person. So similar to a chakra system. Then now you start getting into like things involving the pineal gland and the chakra system. And now you can start drawing real life correlations that have numbers. You can start saying, okay, these are all different sections of the body. They operate on different frequency fields. Every individual has a different frequency signature based on metals in their blood. Some people have more copper-rich blood or iron, whatever it might be. And those things will all affect this, right? Your aura field. It'll also affect the way that you rebroadcast signals, right? Because if you're familiar with your cable television or any coaxial cable in a cell tower is lined with copper. So like you probably heard Rh negative people have higher concentrations of copper blood. I'm not sure if I'm wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Or I have that correct. But you kind of see this energetic field here, right? And how this all ties into what we're talking about. You have an aura, you have bioplasma, you have POR, DOR, and your thought forms, your emotions play into it. It's a cycle. You have spheres. And when you think about this in terms of energy harvesting, say, for example, somebody came up with a methodology behind not only extracting this, but storing it, then redirecting it. And that's when you start getting to where this gets really interesting, because there are antenna arrays like HARP, right, that purely just broadcast straight up into the ionosphere. So you have to ask yourself, what is the purpose of that? And again, I don't know. I really don't know what HARP is. I can only speculate. And there's an official explanation, but I know that when you point antennas up into the ionosphere, meaning you're just pointing an omnidirectional antenna and beaming it straight up into the sky, there's probably a reason for that. So think of this antenna here, right? Is this just mimicking what this person's doing? Are you just sort of creating a constant series of these unity gain spheres that just keep going around and around and around and bouncing off the ionosphere and just creating this loop of energetics? So when you talk about raising your vibration, lowering your vibration, there's something to this, right? Lowering your frequency, raising your frequency, creating a higher vibratory state, because really we're all contributing to this energetic grid that involves DOR and POR, right? This is something we're all contributing to. This is the hypothesis. I think it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think this through a little bit, guys. What I just said about the karma cycle, think about that as the planet. In fact, hang on, I'm going to rewind it just a little bit.
Discussing. So thanks for sticking with me on part 3. I know I kind of bounced around there a little bit, but there's an official explanation. This is something we're all contributing.
Yeah, so let's talk about this a little bit. You understand like what I was saying with the karma cycle? And so if you think about it, guys, like what you do with this process here, let me get the mouse on this, is so here is your motivational. You have sexual attraction, you have your heart signal pumping blood. It's basically makes the energy process almost like the carnival bell, where you hit the thing down here and it goes all the way to the top and goes ring, bing, whatever it does, it clocks the bell. And at that point, you have this 3D prism that's basically a form through the pineal gland right here, the left eye, the right eye, and that forms the 3D prism that goes in here. So then what you do is you send 7.83 hertz earth brainwave relative to human brainwave at about 8 hertz. There's a bioplasma emission of this orgone energy. So call it orgone, call it bioplasma, whatever you want to. That's what's going on. And so when you think of something and ruminate on something, the reason why sometimes people just they can feel each other thinking about each other from way across when and it seems to transcend all time and space is because they're everything we exist in is really just this. This feels like 20 some thousand miles, but is it really? It's all perception. What you're thinking about or who you're thinking about or why you're thinking, I mean, whatever it is, it's not as far away as you think it is. And it's not whatever because those are just perceptions. It's energy just traveling and finding its way to whatever. So everything is cybernetic links, thought form entities, and the way these fields within your body integrate or respond to the universal plasma field. So this person, I would argue, what they're receiving with this orgone is God. This is the universal plasma field. It's the reason why God is such a mystery to people, whether they're actually in the religion or they have no religion. It's still what it is. The religion is the Big Bang Theory and various whatever. If you're an atheist or rigid atheist, that's still its own religion. I mean, can we agree, guys? I mean, if you think this through a little bit, isn't that a belief system? Isn't atheism and this rigid notion that it's all science and there's absolutely no room for spirituality? It's completely ridiculous. Because in all actuality, the more you understand this, you realize that science is actually quite simple, that we've been all fed a lot of complicated, unnecessarily complicated lies within our alleged education, which just pushed us further and further away from understanding the very basics of this. And again, I'm not saying that standard calculations and science don't have merit. Of course they do. I mean, they're obviously relevant. But I think you really can throw out quite a bit of what we've learned up until now in school. Think about it. Almost every time, like, you get to a certain grade, you realize, hey, wait a second, Santa Claus doesn't exist. Hey, wait a minute, the Easter Bunny doesn't exist. Hey, wait a minute, George Washington didn't chop down that freaking tree. Why'd you tell me that story, anyways? Well, you had a simple brain and we just wanted to, like, tell you something that said the president was awesome. And yeah, well, we just wanted you to behave. So we said that about Santa Claus. Well, we wanted Easter to be religious and fun. So we told you about the Easter Bunny. Lies, lies, lies. Yeah. Where's the Thompson twins? Lies, lies, lies. Yeah. A lot of lies. That's all right. I mean, we're fixing it. We're going to fix the grid, right? This is how we do it. We just understand it. And the more of us who understand this, the quicker we figure it all out together. Like if we all just get this one thing, it solves so many problems. If more people understood that what they're putting out is on its way back, and this is actually how it works as science, just have to understand some really basic numbers. They're not even very complicated calculations. Earth, 7.83 hertz. Human brainwave between alpha and theta, about 8 hertz. That's where most of the time our brain is residing frequency wise. And that once you read Bob Beck's research and others too, by the way, he just explains it more eloquently, that the brainwave and ELF in general can travel 22,000 plus miles. Well, I can tell you via my own calculations that going from one side of the planet to the other is about 10,800, somewhere in that range, guys. I don't know the exact number. I should get the real number. But anytime I've measured it in Google Earth, it gets pretty close to like 10,800 miles when you go from one pole to the bottom. Like, so if you go straight from the North Pole to the South Pole and just run a straight line, it's going to be about that many miles.
So if that's halfway around and 22,000 miles is how far brainwave travels, that means literally you go around the entire Earth. So that's karma. And if you know that there is a universal plasma field that's creating this 3D projection, then literally we are manifesting reality. And getting people to believe in the collective hive mind things that aren't true helps form understood psychoenergetic reality. Is the guys, they know this is true. And if there's the greatest sign of this is that there's all these people that believe lies. Rigidly they believe lies. It's like you're trying to convince them that something else is true, and they're looking at you like, I don't know what are you talking about? Thoughts become things. They literally, like that Michael Jackson song said, the lie becomes the truth. Yeah, but your false narrative just ain't true. It's just a story you told to deviate us away from Oregon. Yee. I had to get a little humor in there. Sorry, guys. I take the subject seriously, but and I guess that's a little magic we're working there too, right? May as well ride the frequency wave of some Michael Jackson song that everybody's heard. See, that's actually alchemy when you think about it. There's reasons why like just integrating a quick rhythm into something can actually make a thought more powerful. I'm not trying to be a magician or any sense, but it's just one of those things that I learned over time that this is really how it's working, guys. Um, yeah. I don't think I'll be karaokeing any of his songs anytime soon, but that's about as close as you're going to get. All right, so let me play this. Continue on. I just wanted to make sure that because I almost never have this slide right here, like at that size on the screen. And I think that the more you can visualize this and just see it up close and really think about the human energy process, you have male female attraction, the Ka and Ba represented here. You have the standard heart connections, and these are like longitudinal waveforms are actually like the same way a microwave dish aims from one building or one tower to the other. That's a little bit how the heart signal's working. You have sexual attraction. You have the heart signal that's like the rhythm. Boom, 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 boom. You have all these processes pushing all of the physical matter fluids that is the bioplasma up and down the body, all absorbing information. And that's what it's doing constantly. It's just like a computer. You're just storing things in this physical body of yours that is the hard drive. I mean, really. And so every time you're sending something out, it's on its way back. When you send it out, it's on its way back. Send it out, it's on its way back. That's why folks have had to develop very clever technologies to avoid this process. And guys, not to get to whatever, but if you really want to know what the Nazis know and what they do and why they do it, it's because they're trying to create a system through which they don't actually have to receive what they put out. I call that karma delay and karma lag. It's about transferring that negative karma over to others by getting them to believe things. That's why, because fake news. That's why, because fake narratives. That's why, because they're always the one in charge of Hollywood working your heartstrings. They're good at it because a lot of it is about karma delay and karma lag. They know this process inside and out. They'll mess with timelines, they'll mess with human energy, anything to avoid their karma. But it doesn't always work. They're good at it, but the more awareness people can have about how this is all working and the more they can just simply understand it, you don't have to even go to war necessarily. Just getting a ton of people in this society to understand this simultaneously would have a radical effect. I promise you. In fact, it's part of the ascension process. I'm not going to get deep into that because I want to make this more about this. But yes, what's going to deliver us from this current hell we're in is people understanding this exact cycle because it bridges everything scientific that's rigidly scientific. It bridges it right into spirituality. And it helps the rigid atheist who's a strict scientist and everything else like that understand that, okay, you don't believe in any of these things and you don't think that they're possible. But once I understand to you the the psychoenergetic process of how we do exist in a universal plasma field, all kinds of people have studied it and figured it out. So at least accept that as a data point because it did come from military documentation.
then you must know that the game is always to get tons and tons of people to believe in something, then it manifests. This I do believe, whether you believe in Christianity or the Bible or not, it doesn't matter, guys. The Bible's manifesting in this timeline because people all over the world believe it. Whether you think it's true or not, totally irrelevant. It's happening. But simultaneously, the Quran's happening because millions of people and billions of people all over believe that. Hinduism's happening. What else? Guys, I don't want to leave anything out. Judaism's happening. It's all integrating together, and the stories are similar because space and time don't exist in all reality. So what you're really witnessing is this series of cross timelines where we used to be separated by continents, which you can really, guys, you didn't always be able to get from like America over to Europe. You couldn't always easily get from Africa over to Saudi Arabia, whatever it is, guys. Like, it took significant effort. You would have to have some craft that would take you faster than the human legs could travel. Those used to be different timelines because those people could never interact. When you really start thinking about this on a more philosophical level, it'll be more exciting because you'll realize that you're not just hypothesizing and philosophizing. You're actually starting to figure out what happened. We're really just a bunch of mixed timelines right now. We are. Continents are probably more representations of timelines, and that should excite you a little bit because these are cycles that keep going boop 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 boop. And I do believe we're going to be in the midst very soon of another one of these cycles, and that's why everything right now is just reaching a fever pitch of weirdness and synchronicity, and lots of people are thinking about it. Lots of people are thinking this is going on. I don't claim to even be whatever, but yeah. Yeah, guys, again, so White Boy was like, yeah, it's manifesting the Bible, but there's also imposters too. Yeah, I get it, guys. But you see what I'm saying though? Like, that's the game of the Nazi fake news media cycle. That's why they own all the news stations. They are literally trying to replace God. You tell me what that is. That's why I love that Arcade Fire song. There's just some spirit I used to know that's been drowned out by the radio. There's this spirit. Think about that line. There's this spirit I used to know that's been drowned out by the radio. What's the spirit? It's the Holy Spirit. It's the universal plasma field, if you're going to speak about it scientifically. And on that universal plasma field is writing everybody's concept of God. So what he's really saying in the song, even if he doesn't even realize it's working that way, is the radio networks, the broadcast radio, are drowning out our perception of what we actually exist in. It's replacing it with false narratives. Hey, you're listening to 105 point whatever. Hey, you're listening to 95.5. No. Hi, welcome to Fox News. Welcome to MSNBC. Welcome to blah, 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 blah. This is the truth. This is the truth. This is the truth. You believe this, don't you? No, you're replacing it. You're taking away what we had and drowning it out with your radio broadcast, your television broadcast, your satellite comm broadcast. They were trying to be God to us. And you know something, guys, ladies and gentlemen, like, if you think about it, it's because they got absorbed by this cycle. It ate them up. That's what happens when you think that you can be the universal plasma cycle. It fights back a little bit and it says, no, you can't be God. You can't be like me. It doesn't allow for it. Nature won't allow for it because, remember, it was here. We're making it, but it was here before us, and that's its miracle. How do you even figure that out? Because it's always been here. That's how you know it's a creator. It's the God. Now, again, guys, I'm not a person that believes in a lot of those things in general, but I had to once I studied this long enough. I didn't even have an option. I'm glad to, but I almost resist discussing it too much just because I don't want people that are put off by that talk to think that I'm just a religious person. It's not that. It's that the more I studied the maps and the way all these things line up across the world and all these like 33-degree azimuth alignments and things that happened to me that I know made alignments in physical reality based on emotions, that it would literally bend the plasma field. And I can't be convinced otherwise. Maybe I could, I don't know, but Oh, the song? Yeah. Oh, I thought you said what is the song? Yeah, the one that I was singing just a second ago was by Arcade Fire, and it's called I think it's Neighborhoods Number 4 Kettles 7. I know that's really weird title. It's weird because I'm 47 years old right now. Neighborhood 4 Kettles 7 47. But yeah. All right, hang on.
This is the hypothesis. I think it's worth discussing. So thanks for sticking with me on part 3. I know I kind of bounced around there a little bit, but it's kind of necessary before we start digging heavier into the concepts of mind control on military leaders, populations, and individuals, because you kind of have to have a thread that basically explains the underlying technology so that you understand that we're dealing with something that isn't an etheric energy, but I think it's made possible through a mix of electromagnetics, if that makes sense. So if we're talking about Phoenix Project, we're talking about Project Rainbow, we know there's methodologies for creating circumstances that are more quote unquote DOR friendly environments where you can generate more of this energetics. And it seems to me like that combination of 1680 and 403 megahertz or somewhere in that range is what makes this possible. And I've measured these signals myself. So, there's something to this. What it precisely means, what it actually is, whether it be positive, destructive, I don't know. But the evidence is there, and it's definitely worth exploring further. So that's my hypothesis for now. There's going to be more parts to this. We're going to keep going. It's going to get a lot more in depth here soon. So thank you for sticking with me, and looking forward to part 4. Have a good day. All right, welcome back to part 4. So I had some interesting developments happen between the last section, and I need to introduce them into this report. So I'm probably going to split this off into 2 sections involving mind control, and I need to.
All right. I'm going to take a break from this presentation to do something I think that's a little bit more. Well, I want to expand on what I was just talking about earlier because, and again, what I'll do is, so we got up to part 3 on this one tonight. All right. And I'm hitting about 2 hours. And if I try to do this material, like, all the way through, I'm going to be on for too long. And so I don't want to use part 4 yet. What I'd rather do, folks, is either tomorrow night or the night after. I'm probably going to come on around the same time that I did tonight. I really never know when it's going to be. Like I say, guys, I'm working full time now. So these are my work days, and I can't like really stay up as late as I normally do without feeling tired in the morning. But I do enjoy doing these at this point, even if the channel isn't putting in much revenue. I just feel like it's necessary. I don't know. It's not really about that ever, guys. That's just because, I got to live. It's not like I don't want to get into the topic again. But again, if you do feel like contributing, you're here or whatever, I just put some comments inside the chat. I also have it down there in the description. It would really help out with the channel right now. Just paying the bills on the channel, to be honest with you, which aren't that expensive, but I have to get the StreamYard software. So even, $10 is great. That pays for StreamYard for a month, or, other things that I need as far as the equipment goes, so I can actually get you guys some good measurements out there and put them on video soon. And when I have my next couple days off, I'm really going to make an effort to do that. I'm going to try to do some soil measurements and everything like that, and get some of that research recorded, and then just share it with you, something new, because I haven't done anything since I was out in like the California desert. Yeah, that was the last time that I really was doing significant measurements. So I like to do it now that I'm in a much different environment as far as like the things that I can measure. I have like a really good area here where there's a lot of trees and ways to like compare energy readings relative to like closer to the sidewalk and closer to other, like just different environments where trees can be integrated into it, because I think it's really important to demonstrate the energy signatures of trees relative to soil when we're talking about these things. It really seemed to really do things for people when they saw that, to have the idea in their mind that a tree can have potentially could have consciousness. a tree might be thinking something and you just don't realize it. That it could just be like this huge carrier of information that's broadcasting data. The Druids knew that about them. And even if you don't think that the Druids were right or they're just some whatever, I don't know, you know, they believed that trees were like one of them and they had a consciousness. So yeah, actually, so just so you know, I don't think that's. Don't worry about it. So, good witchy says, not meaning to offend anyway, but measurements inside a religious building like a church might be interesting too. Great suggestion. Thank you very much. Because things like that occur to me, but I never see that would be a great way to do an environmental reading. I'm actually, you know what? That's such a good idea. Yes, man, I'm getting goosebumps right now. Thank you. Yeah, I will do that. I'm going to find a way to do that. What I would like to do sometime is in like a real church that I feel like it gets that has like a good architecture, that it was designed the way a church is designed to amplify whatever. I would like to actually take an energy reading to see, like, for example, how does the inside of the church measure compared to the outdoor environment, and then do studies where I start the energy reading while the church is empty or nearly empty, and then continue measuring the energy in the church while the different people come in to congregate, and then find out how it changes the energy field relative to the people in the church as they pray and go through their various whatever. That I think would actually be a very, very good exercise or test, and I'm definitely going to remember that. So don't worry. How quickly I can do it is a whole nother topic, because that's just, but yeah, I think it would be amazing. I agree, because I have equipment to do that. And I think I have enough people that have some common ideologies that might actually be interested in doing something like that too, that may be interested in helping out with that, to where we could make that work out, you know. Wouldn't hurt for Gabe to get to church, like in Blues Brothers, you get wise, you go to church. There's something to that. We're on a mission from God. Yeah, if you think about it, what greater thing can you do if you're going to be doing some holy work? That's, to me, that says a lot. Like, I mean, even if you just did it as a scientific thing, you'd be or at a less conscious or directly conscious level, you would still be doing something godly. So I think that's great. To me, I'm always looking for those things that inside feel like it's a win-win and not being a waste of time. I think it would be interesting to you as the audience. I'm personally very curious about what that translates to, and I know I could get the excitement of others to be involved with it too, just because it is a really cool idea. So yeah, I've wanted to do things like that, but more like retreats and healing centers and things like that. But an actual, like, constructed church, like something like a Catholic church that actually has the big cathedrals and whatever, and actually is built to actually, amplify the energy inside, I think would be very fascinating. I would actually like to get more equipment before I even attempted that. But again, I don't want to delay that one. I'm really going to put that one on a priority list, just so you know. So thank you for the suggestion. Um, and never worry about whether or not it's too religious-y or if you're going to be offended. I don't think this room is really wired that way. And if somebody wants to be that way, that's their problem. So never. That's not. I really don't want anybody apologizing for that. I just try not to scare off too many people that are trying to learn about certain things. Myself. But no, I'm a believer that there's something going on that's very holy. When I say Holy Spirit, it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm defining that bioplasma or the universal plasma field as the Holy Spirit. What I'm suggesting to you is I believe that's what's being communicated within Catholicism, that you have the Father, the Son. So, you have the one form of the what you came from, what you are, and then where it all started. You know, so your Father is where you came from. Son is what you are, and then the Holy Spirit is how it all manifested, because none of this would have existed unless that was flowing through both your father and you and your mother. Yeah. So right on. Okay, good. Everybody's feeling that. Good. I'm glad. All right. Let me find another one of these reports, though, really fast that I think that I have here. Wow, I did get through quite a bit of this tonight. Yeah, it's really better. There's 3 more parts to this series, guys. That it's better than what you've seen before, just so you know. And it's going to get into MK Ultra. I mean, if you want to watch it on your own, there's a whole playlist. You don't need me to narrate it for you. You may prefer to watch it on your own and then come back to this presentation tomorrow. And I'm going to stay on for a little bit longer. Don't worry. Well, not that you're worried, but I'm not getting offline right now or anything. I'm just letting you know. I had one other article that I wanted to play, and I just wanted to find it really quick before whatever, but because it kind of gets into this discussion, and I think you guys did see it. But like, for example, I personally think that we are dealing with something like a bit of an existential crisis of sorts, where quite a few people have, I think, been taken over by some of these some energetic things that involve this karma cycle. And hang on really quick. Where is that? I might have put it in my energetics playlist, so let me find that really quick. I wasn't planning on doing this one, but also, guys, ladies and gentlemen, if you want to hear like a really good discussion of some of these topics, look up Malachi Martin and Art Bell. And they're usually about 2 to 3 hour interviews, and there's like several of them available because he went on that show quite a bit. Man, are they ever fascinating. And they really get into these things, both dark and light. What like astral projection is relative to a Jesuit's perspective, a former Jesuit, I should say, since he left the church. There's some really, really interesting things going on there. So let's see here. Operation Paperclip. No, that's not what I'm trying to find. Oh, yeah, I do have this here. So bioplasma, spirituality, and science. Do I have time to play that one? No. Yeah, actually, that's the one we're going to do instead, because I already showed you the one about exorcism.
I just want to talk real quick about skepticism surrounding the science of, I guess you could call it bioplasma. There is a word for it, bioplasma, and it involves the energetics or psychoenergetics or bioenergetics, depending on the where I guess where you're directing your research towards. But when we discuss this human energy that is difficult to quantify, that's bioplasma. So when I talk about etheric energy, that's called quote unquote dark energy, or even the light energy, those are just ways, I guess you could just say I'm not going to call them dramatic. I'm just trying to simplify them, in ways that are easy to discuss. But yes, in different cultures, you call them different things in different disciplines, right? And that's all I was getting at with some of my other clips about energetics, is that various religions deal with energies. So it's more a way to say that, yes, the underlying things behind spirituality have a science to it. I think that's a cool thing. I don't think that's bad at all. I think that's, if you can take science and apply it to your faith, that's a cool thing. You're actually proving to people that when you pray, you're doing something. That's all this is about. I mean, there's more to it. There's darker aspects to it, obviously, but the positive aspect to what I'm telling you is that if you pray, you do create bioplasma. And it's been in my research. I'll get into that in a second. It's nothing new. I'm not claiming to be the first person to talk about.
Something, I'm not sure that I believe that you create it as much as you're able to let it flow through you. And I think that what makes that possible, what makes it more powerful, is very behavioral in nature, because you get the best results when you go into alpha state brainwave, And something tells me that what that really is doing is it is in relaxing your mind. That part where the emission goes through your crown chakra, where the actual energy emits. Because remember, guys, this energy is passing through everything. So what we are is like a skull or eyes. I mean, that doesn't matter at all to extremely low frequency. It doesn't even like a brick wall that'd go, I'm the juggernaut. I mean, it would go right through that thing. Okay. It doesn't like it sees through everything. If you know that reference, that probably would make you laugh. But anyways, back to this. ELF is the juggernaut, bitch. Anyways, sorry about my language,
About
guys.
these
Wasn't trying
things.
to be offensive.
I just have a different perspective.
It's a reference to an old cartoon thing that was kind of funny, but
because I've just been so in touch with these themes. But this particular article just talks about the DARPA studies, which I've gone into detail about with the DIA, CIA reports. I have a series called Controlled Offensive Behavior that you should probably watch if you're interested in learning about this or just getting some research data. I don't present my material like I'm an expert or anything. I know a lot about radio frequency from my job experience, but that's pretty limited, frankly, when it comes to these types of themes. But I can apply how things involving radio frequency at the tower and wireless level can be integrated into these concepts if you're discussing bioenergetics, bioplasma, the human energy, just like a Bruce Lee movie, G. Okay, it's that simple. And or if you're in a different belief system, then it takes on a different type of thing. And when we talked about what inspired a lot of this was watching Hostage to the Devil about Father Malachi Martin, because in my own mind, it really helped me get in touch with spirituality. This didn't take me further away from it. This helped me, as a person who's been agnostic my whole life, understand that the sense that I had that there was something greater and an energy underlying it existed. So the reason why I believe that these things are there's so much doubt placed in them is because there's gatekeepers to bioplasma. See, there's people who have a vested interest in understanding bioenergetics and bioplasma, and this bioplasma, if you start studying this very carefully, you're going to understand that this is underlying. In my mind, I believe this is an economy. There is an underlying economy. I'm not the only person who believes this, but people call it various things. And I think people call it energy harvesting. That's one word for it. Here's what I would tell people who are skeptics that these things occur and that there are bioplasma extraction activities occurring. If you believe that human trafficking occurs, if you believe that there's a culture of people that will snatch a child off the street and sell that child or its organs or a combination of both, depending on what value they place, then you must understand that people who study bioplasma, the underlying energy, must know something, because this research was being done in the 50s. It's from a Scientific America article, by the way.
yeah, guys, and I wasn't trying to go like all dark and depressing when I said that. I'm saying that what you need to understand is it'll be very difficult for you to really get the people who do those things until you understand energetics. It's a big motivational factor behind all human trafficking, especially when it comes to modifying the behaviors of generations using the children as an energy conduit. They've learned who I call them super delegates of bioenergy, people who have just way stronger flows of the energy. They look for the children, they get DNA profiles, they find out which ones are the indigo kids or the ones that are in the talented and gifted programs. They really go for these bloodline, like ones that have generations of this sort of intellect and knowledge, like that they're just sort of born with.
Like these kids that like, there's ones that are over there that like they know all kinds of things just right out of the gate. They don't even like have to be taught it. They just know things. And so what these groups that are into these trafficking things, especially the ones that the Nazis that came to America, and they did this in Lebensborn, they did it in Europe, they've always done it. They go finding these people. They go look for them. So you need to understand these greater concepts to sort of understand what motivates them, because they see these people as like influence conduits, and they will raise them from birth to death, always controlling their lives because of what they can do with human energy. They don't even have any humanity about it, and it exists in this country. It's a big reason, if you ask me. I think that's why Britney Spears had the situation that she's had for so many years. She has influence, strong bioenergetic fields that's amplified because of her fan base that just love her. And so that's energy being sent that she can accumulate and that somebody else in turn can collect. All right. This is why the Disney system, this is why a lot of them wind up with these tragic, futures after they get all ushered in. All right. So I'm not trying to go dark too much, guys, but it's just that, again, I always say if you don't get energetics and you don't start working with those of us who really do understand it and want to help and actually will pour our heart and souls and lives into it, like you shouldn't continue to shun us. You shouldn't continue to act like this isn't a thing. It is at the peril of our society, of the world, of this country, and it keeps you from getting a solution to this problem because you deny the obvious. I'm just putting that out there as a PSA for those who need to hear it.
Bioenergetics, which applies to the physical body, cell chemistry, genetics, living organisms, and psychoenergetics, which applies directly to the minds, personalities, memories, emotions, and perceptions of living systems. Russian energetics research, development, weapons, and weapon sites are under the rigid control and operation of the KGB by whatever name it may use at the time. The energetics weapons are not in the regular Russian armed forces. Energetics weapons have been tested worldwide for several decades, and this testing has been documented elsewhere by the president. So there you go. Now, this all involves DNA. You hear a lot of people right now having spiritual experiences, myself included. I was agnostic my whole life. Yes, then suddenly I start understanding the chakra system. Suddenly I start having experiences that are very spiritual in nature, and I have no explanation for them. So I'll even link to this article. I'd also really appreciate it if this interests you, if you'd look into some of my research on the DIA, Defense Intelligence Agency report on controlled offensive behavior. I have a whole section on bioplasma research and how it involves mind manipulation, telepathy, the electromagnetic spectrum, ultra high frequency. We cover everything. And I hope you'll give my material some time. I know I can bounce around a little bit, but the things that I'm talking about are only a couple hours. I give a lot of good research data backed up with my own spectrum analysis, which is basically a signal measurement. I am doing good research into this with limited resources. So I hope that you'll give it some consideration, because bioplasma, there seems to be an economy behind it, and we need to understand who's controlling that economy, where are they performing these activities, and who are they performing them on. I think that those are valid questions, and to those who are the gatekeepers of information, or who buy into the narrative of those gatekeepers, I would just say that it's really easy. Like if the CIA is the librarian, it's easy for the librarian just to close the doors to the library and tell all the people outside, well, yeah, we might have that book. We might have that book. It's possible that it's behind here, and you may have evidence that we have that book. But how do you know we have that book? Well, can we go in and look? Well, in 20 years, we'll let you see some of the books. oh, okay, so in 20 years, and I can have access to all those books that I don't have access to now. Well, you'll have access to some of them, but we're gonna like tear out like most of the pages that have all the stuff that you're looking for, anyways. So, oh, okay. See, that's the argument that we're in here, folks. That's what the CIA and that's what these people that argue on behalf of these companies that do this research are doing. They did all the research. They have all the records. So conveniently, in turn, they go, well, how do you know that's happening? Well, I don't know. I've got a pretty good map back to where it leads, so I'll say that much. Anyways, I think it's worth consideration. Bioplasma, the economy of it, worth talking about, because this does actually bridge the gap between faith and science, whether people want to believe that or not. It did for me. So, thanks.
Okay.
All right, I need to talk about energy. And
No, I already did. Okay. I had to pause that one. Sorry. Yeah, I was gonna play the one about Malachi Martin again, but it's too long to do tonight, and I just played it for you guys a few days ago when I was doing some of the other presentations. But I'll probably do that one tomorrow. So tomorrow I'm going to be doing when I do a stream, just so you know in advance. It's going to be, if it's tomorrow, it's tomorrow. If not, I'll do it the day after, whenever. But it's going to be energetics part 4, and I don't know why I called it part 4A, 4B. It's actually just they're separate modules, but the two of them were trying to cover the same topic, and I was just worried that I was going to make some really, really long, 40 some minute long thing, and it wouldn't be easy to digest for people. And at the time, I was trying to keep, and I still do for the most part, I try to make most of my material no longer than what you would watch like the standard TV sitcom for. So they almost always are under 30 minutes if I can squeeze the material in that. And so I'll be covering that next probably. And yeah, what else here? Yeah. Well, guys, it's because I've been doing all this job training, and so I have to take training modules, and so I keep calling them that because it's just the verbiage that I'm using at work and things like that. Like, what training module are we on right now? So that's kind of how these things feel. Like they're documentaries, but they're more like modules, I guess, if you think about it. You take your test afterwards, everybody. Okay, what's the difference between chi and plasma? And I don't know. I'm just making a joke. Anyways, hang on really quick. Yeah, I was trying to think here. So yeah, if you're wondering, like, also where you get these reports, um, you can find them on the CIA.gov Freedom of Information Act library. I don't know how wise it is to actually go to that library, but that's where the documents are. And they declassified tons. I haven't been there lately, but they declassified just an enormous amount of the psychic research. I don't know what the time frame that you have to do that on, like how many years before it becomes declassified. I think there's some guidelines on most material has to be reviewed at least at some timeline point, but most of the Stargate project research ended in the 90s, the mid 90s, under the helm of Science Applications International Corporation. And just to give you guys like why that's concerning, that in America, I think our big problem, guys, to be honest with you, is that that's the problem. That what SAIC likes to do, as far as I can tell, is they tell everybody else that it's kind of one thing. Hang on here. They kind of misrepresent what they actually know. And so as far as I can tell, that's been like a big part of their whatever, is just they presented like one story to the they presented one story to I think the intelligence agencies and the army and the military in general, because everything that SAIC is mirrors. And I'll show you really quick. This is why you should be concerned that all the psychic research was. Oh, there they are, guys. Yep, you see them there. So it's their name is Science Applications International Corporation, and like Nazis like to do, they invert and reverse everything from its actual meaning. So in case you're wondering who owns SAIC, you just got to do the mirror. Yep. Oh, you never noticed that? Yeah, that's one of my favorite slides. I did that one a long time ago. And guys, it's not funny actually. I just have to, guys, I've been through so much shit with this. I have to laugh anymore. I mean, what I need you guys to understand is that this has been the hidden hand around my entire adult life, if not sooner. It's been this freaking lab, and I'm sick of them. I kind of wish they would just be deleted from the universe, but you know, I don't have that kind of influence. In America, I think this is our cancer, is this company. I think it's something that has been festering and secretly accumulating power. And if you don't think that it's true, guys, just take a look at their CEO. Go look it up. This company, guys, if you don't think that they are in the game and they aren't the ones responsible for all the deception and fuckery, you tell me this. Why does this is their this is actually their CEO's name. So go look up SAIC and look up that name that you see right there. Okay. Nazzi, you know, Nazi with two Z's. Keen, which sounds like, and this is their whole method, guys. It sounds like Nazi king. Then on top of that, whatever, just check this out, guys. Then this company spun off to a company named Leidos. So look at this. Psych. The CIA's psych. They psyched you out. And then once they were done psyching everybody out, oh yeah, oh it gets deep. You just wait. I'm showing you something here. Then once they got done psyching everybody out, they created a company called Leidos. Okay, so they go from SAIC equals psych to Leidos equals Leidos. Ladies and gentlemen, these are the people in charge of everything to do with brainwave and had like 90% of the research in America. And knowing that they do things like that and they have a CEO named Nazi King, do you honestly think that they told American soldiers the truth about what they knew, or do you think they kept it for themselves? So I'm going to leave you with that for the evening. That's something to blow your mind until next time. Can you believe this, guys? It's mirrors. Just remember, guys, everything that I just told you today involving energetics, it all is heavily like these people do everything is inversion. They flip everything. They mirror. When you see the technique used called deflection, mirroring, they are masters. And if their logo doesn't tell you everything, I don't know what to say. Spend some more time thinking about it, then circle. I don't want to say that, man. Definitely don't want to be quoting Kasaka Bomb. Probably an SAIC asset, no doubt. Don't like quoting that person. All right. So I'm going to sign off, folks. I really appreciate you joining and everything else like that. If I'm not on tomorrow doing the next series of energetics, I will be the day after probably. And don't forget, if you can or are willing to or would like to, the contribution details are below in the description section. It would really help the channel out right now, and myself included, until I start getting paid from this job I just got. Anyways, guys, thank you very much. I appreciate you joining, and we'll see you soon. God bless.